to prevent further lives from being lost and to enhance the social and economic well-being of the Northwest region. He says the government must also commit to upgrading the link roads on the Donegal and Monaghan sides of the border.
Our motion isn't just about the A5, it is also about the connecting roads on either side of the border in terms of the A5. So the 10T project, which is going before the Department and Government soon, is really important. That gets the green light in terms of that road from Lefford right into Letterkenny, and also on the other end, the Clonturbert end in Monaghan. It's important that that is there as well. We can't just have a dual carriageway in the north and then leading into substandard roads on either side.
1 in 4 people in the Republic believe there will be a United Ireland within the next 10 years, according to a new poll published today. A survey conducted by Amoric Research for the European Movement found half of those surveyed north of the border believe a United Ireland will happen by 2033. It also found support for Ireland's continued membership of the EU stands at 88%, one of the highest approval ratings in the European Union. Noel O'Connell of the European Movement in Ireland says perhaps the most surprising finding is that people in the north have greater trust in the EU and Irish government than they do in the UK government.
In Northern Ireland, 44% of people trust the EU, 34% of them trusted the Irish government, whilst 22% of them trusted the British government. So regardless of whether people voted Remain or Leave, 44% of people in Northern Ireland trust the EU versus 22% trusting the British government.
The Deputy Chairperson of the Regional Health Forum West says CELTA and the HSE's efforts to streamline operations at Letterkenny University Hospital must be acknowledged, but is stressing it's very much a work in progress. Officials told Councillor Kieran Brogan in reply to questions that a local injury unit is operational in the emergency department at present, and it's hoped that can be enhanced with more funding as part of the winter plan. Liaison officers are being appointed, measures are being introduced to help people who are frail, and the Pathfinder initiative is helping keep people out of hospital by treating them in their own homes. Councillor Brogan says the more people that can be kept out of the hospital, the better.
We have a huge county in Donegal and everybody doesn't need to be going to the hospital. And I think there's a role for everyone, and that's from the GPs to the primary care centres, right across all primary care to the hospital and then the community hospitals. The ambulance service plays a huge role in this as well. Now we have the new Pathfinder project that has been ongoing now for the last number of weeks.
Further showers today with some brighter sunny spells developing. Some of those showers persistent and heavy with a slight chance of a thunderstorm. Becoming breezy again with moderate to fresh westerly winds. Top temperatures today 14 to 16 degrees Celsius. And that's Highland Radio News. We're back with news again at 10 o'clock.
Whether it's golfing, gardening or going for a new personal best, at Nurofen we know sometimes body pain can stop you in your tracks. Time for the power of new Nurofen Long Lasting for body pain relief that lasts up to 12 hours day or night. So you keep doing what you're doing and we'll do the long lasting body pain relief. Up to 12 hours pain relief refers to a 2x300mg capsule dose. Nurofen Long Lasting 300mg prolonged release hard capsules contain ibuprofen for backache and muscular pain and period pain. Always read the label.
The county's #1 talk show, The 9 till Noon Show on Highland Radio. And now, it's time for the talk of the Northwest, The 9 till Noon Show with Greg Hughes on Highland Radio.
Hello and a very good morning to you. 4 minutes past 9, Monday the 3rd of July 2023. And we're back for another week with you here on The 9 till Noon Show. How was your weekend? I hope it was very well indeed. Had a beautiful day yesterday. Father Sean Doherty. Of course, Sean Doherty presented a show here on Highland Radio in the mornings, ever popular. Almost 30 years, did I mention that? Yesterday, he was ordained as a priest, Father Sean Doherty now, and that took place in St. Eugene's in Derry. And as I say, very lucky, feel very lucky to have been there, and it was just an amazing day and an amazing story for Father Sean, who will be a guest on this programme, all being well, tomorrow morning. So if you're interested in hearing all about Father Sean's journey, then make sure to tune in tomorrow. But that's tomorrow. We've a whole show to get through today with plenty coming up as well on this programme. Let's start with the newspapers, and we'll start with the Donegal News, which leads with Father Sean's special day. Former Highland Radio presenter Sean Doherty has been ordained a priest at a special ceremony held in St Eugene's Cathedral in Derry. Hundreds of family members, parishioners and friends gathered for Father Sean's special day, which was celebrated by the Most Reverend Dr. Donegal GAA, Bishop of Derry. Yesterday's celebration came just 6 years after Father Sean's shock announcement to step away from his popular morning programme here on Highland Radio to dedicate his life to God. Having been based in Rome since he was ordained a deacon last year, it's expected that he'll be based in the Derry Diocese now that he's ordained a priest. Father Sean is the first of three due to be ordained a priest in the Derry Diocese this year. During the service, Bishop Donegal GAA said Father Sean is being ordained at a time when there is so much discussion about the future of the church in Ireland. And indeed, the bishop made some interesting comments about the church bending to suit, I don't want to misquote him either, but bending just to suit modern ways of life, and that the church in doing so would be built on a sandy foundation and what have you, which I thought were quite interesting comments. But anyway, once again, congratulations to Father Sean, who'll be on this show tomorrow for his first chat, I believe, as a ordained priest. The Derry News this morning: concerns have been raised surrounding the impact a Derry dump is having on local drinking water. Derry City and Strabane District Council will request Northern Ireland Water answer questions about the Mowboy dump impact on drinking water following recent revelations. The issue was raised at the monthly meeting of the council. Last month it was revealed that specialists brought in by Stormont now estimate that there is 1.6 million tonnes of waste at the dump, 40% more than the previous upper estimate. And I was chatting to lots of people yesterday, and many of them Derry-based, Tyrone-based, who've pointed out since the sad closure of BBC Radio Foyle, or partial closure, I'm not really quite sure how you might phrase that they've tuned into us, which is great, and welcome aboard. Thank you. I've never formally welcomed those of you who switched to this show aboard, and we're here for you as well too, by the way. So if you have any issues or topics that you wish to raise that are particular to your area, please feel free to WhatsApp us and text us and call us. We're here for you too. From the north, the number to WhatsApp or text is 00353 86 60 25,000, or if you want to give us a buzz at 00353 7491 25,000. But your calls, comments and texts are greatly appreciated. And as I say, I didn't really think, as I probably should, but I don't want to be dishonest. I never really thought about it quite until I was chatting to people yesterday, and it was lovely to talk to so many people as well. On to the Irish Independent now, and it's one of those stories that's beyond comprehension. If you were to allow yourself for a moment to put yourself in the position. 2 Irish Leaving Cert students on a post-exams holiday in Greece with friends have died in what their school described as a devastating loss. Andrew O'Donnell and Matt Wall, former students of St Michael's College in Dublin, died on the Greek island of Los at the weekend. Their former school yesterday confirmed the 2 deaths, saying it was a day of immense sadness. The 2 students are understood to have travelled to Los with friends late last week. Mr O'Donnell, just 18, is understood to have gone missing on Friday. His body was later found by a cliff. Just hours after his death was confirmed yesterday, the tragedy was compounded when news emerged of the death of his classmate, Mr Wall. St Michael's College paid tribute to its 2 former students and said its thoughts were with the young men's friends who've experienced such shocking loss over the last 24 hours. And obviously what their friends have been through, what their families are going through and will continue to go through, as I say, it's just very hard to even allow yourself to imagine what that must be like, thinking on everyone involved there. The Irish Times this morning, the RTE story, even though I didn't reference it early on, is on the front of it, inside all the papers again today. And the Irish Times tells us that Ryan Tubridy is facing the prospect of being questioned in the Oireachtas about the dealings with RTE after a Dáil committee chairman said The broadcaster would be compelled to appear in Leinster House if he declined to attend voluntarily. As another critical week for RTE looms, the government is preparing to give powers to an external reviewer to examine years of national broadcasters' financial records. The intervention to be agreed on at today's cabinet meeting comes after the Dáil's Public Accounts Committee heard claims that RTE had a slush fund for expensive sports and entertainment junkets. That money came from the same UK barter account it used to funnel special payments to Mr Tubridy, its highest earner for years, and higher, and it turned out, of course, as we know now, much higher than we even thought. The controversy began almost a fortnight ago when it was announced that more than €345,000 in hidden payments had been made to Mr Tubridy. The former Late Late Show host has since widened, and concerns has intensified over lax financial controls in RTE and governance failing in its executive and board. And of course now the focus is on other presenters and their deals with car manufacturers or car suppliers, and those ads being recorded on RTE property without permission, and it just rumbles on and on and on and on. Crisis-ridden RTE, this is the Irish Daily Mail. Crisis-ridden RTE is facing the prospect of having to ask a hostile government for a bailout to pay future tax and PRSI liabilities. The broadcaster's woes are set to be exacerbated by the prospect or expected conclusion of a scope investigation by the Department of Social Protection into claims hundreds of employees were improperly categorised as freelance workers instead of as staff. This is your bogus freelance workers. They've already paid out 1.2 million, but that could grow. Social Protection Minister Heather Humphreys sought a briefing on the progress of the Rutan branch investigation last week, a probe that has been going on since 2020. One source said of the inquiry, it is in depth. Each worker is being interviewed on a case-by-case basis, and if RTE are found to have wrongly classified workers, they will have to rectify the situation. And RTE themselves say they've put millions of your money, taxpayers' money, to one side to cover that eventuality, but they might need a bailout from government beyond that. Lidl and Aldi have reduced the cost of their own brand milk by 10 cent, marking the second such cut this year. Super Value confirmed it would implement a similar cut today. So anytime we see the staples going down, it has to be good news, doesn't it? It comes after Tesco announced price cuts across more than 500 household essentials in the UK during a week where retailers were questioned before a Westminster committee about what they had done to help customers. Noel O'Connor, Group Managing Director of Aldi Ireland, said it reviews the market on a daily basis to ensure it will never be beaten on price. But I do wonder sometimes who is going to actually cover the cost of that reduction. Is it going to be amongst suppliers who are already, of course, under pressure? Shocking statistic in the Irish Daily Mirror. Almost 1,300 children have been put in hospital as a result of dog attacks over the past 10 years. Details released to the Irish Mirror show 3,149 people had inpatient care with bite injuries between 2013 and 2022. So in total, do you find this a shocking figure? 3,149 people hospitalised with dog bites over the last 9-10 years, 1,300 of them children. The Freedom of Information figures reveal 1,300 children, as I mentioned, were under 17. One of the 144 children badly injured was young schoolboy Alexandro Mizan, who was seriously attacked by a pit bull in Enniscorthy, County Wexford last November. The dog ripped off his bottom lip, mauled each of his cheeks as well as injuring the boy's body and legs. The dog was destroyed that evening. That's a lot of injuries as a result of dog bites. And finally, in the Sun, for those of you who are on Twitter, you might have noticed that it's just not performing at times like it might have. Twitter users blasted Elon Musk after he limited them to seeing 1,000 tweets a day. Hashtag Twitter down and hashtag RIP Twitter trended after the owner announced the move. Tycoon Musk, however, called Saturday's decision a good deed. It means unverified users can see only 1,000 posts a day and new unverified users 500. Verified accounts who pay a monthly €12 get a 10,000 limit. Former Twitter employee Esther Crawford said, hubris plus no pushback, customer apathy, data equals a great way to light billions on fire. Haven't a clue what that means. But anyway, It's an interesting move from the king of free speech because it limits the reach of it. The logic behind it is, for anyone who's interested, is that there are AI tools, artificial intelligence tools, that scrape data. It's called scraping data from websites like Twitter, particularly Twitter, because every interaction a user has with Twitter is an interaction, whereas on Facebook or YouTube it's not really quite the same. And you have these, this is the claim anyway, you have these organizations that can scrape millions upon millions upon millions of tweets at the same time. The AI then processes what's being talked about, and sometimes if it's something they don't want talked about, they can use that information then to try and censor that type of speech. So that's the argument. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Some say he's just not paying his Google bills. Greg, why we can't do away with cash for the reasons. This is coming up time and time again, but we heard that the EU's looking to introduce a digital currency, and we're being assured it's no threat to cash, but others might feel differently. Greg, we can't do away with cash for the reason, what if you were in a supermarket buying your messages and the power went off? If you did not have cash, how would you pay? You would not get your messages. What do you do when you have to keep cash going? As simple as that. Well, that's quite true, and I've seen an experience where I was in a very busy restaurant and bar, and the power did go out, and it seemed no one had cash. Everyone was using card, and everything kind of ground to a halt because no one could pay for their food or drink. All right, we're going to be joined by our first guest on the show, but first we must take this quick break.
The newspapers are courtesy of Kelly Centra Mountaintop Letterkenny, the 2022 C-Store National Off-Licence of the Year.
The 9 till noon show is brought to you by Letterkenny Credit Union, offering low-rate car loans with fast approval. Apply online at letterkennycu.ie or in office today.
Want to live a more sustainable lifestyle, but not too sure how to start? Join me, Donna Marie Doherty, every Tuesday at 12:30 for It's Ours to Protect to learn all the tips and tricks. Ours to Protect is funded by Commission Naman with a television licence fee and is a partnership between Highland Radio and the Independent Broadcasters of Ireland. Check out oursprotect.ie for more info.
House to Home Bridgeend, Donegal. Our modest front door opens onto 2 floors of Irish-made furniture, suites, beds, mattresses, dining and occasional furniture. Step into our showroom and see how we can transform your house into a home. House to Home furniture, flooring, slide robes and interiors, Bridgeend, Donegal.
At On Post, we believe in giving you more power over how you bank. That's why AIB and Bank of Ireland customers can now lodge and withdraw money at any of our 900 post offices across Ireland 6 days a week. That's right, your bank is in your post office for personal and business banking alike, meaning you can bank wherever you live or work. Visit your local post office or onpost.com/everydaybanking. On Post, your money for your world. Allied Irish Banks plc and Bank of Ireland are regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Highland Radio time checks with Expressway. Travel Route 32 from Letterkenny to Dublin when you book online and travel for less. Expressway, bringing you the time at...
Okay, 18 minutes past 9. We're joined on the programme now by Councillor Paul Canning. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning. How are you, Greg?
Good. Great to chat to you again. Paul, shall we talk about the residential zoned land tax just right a bit from the beginning? Because I think it's one of those issues even now, though we've discussed it a few times. It's been in the papers and elsewhere, but people might not be fully clear precisely what it is. So can we run through that to begin with, if that's okay?
Yeah, that's okay. The residential zoned land tax is a tax that has been applied to lands that have been zoned that are available for building, basically. In Donegal, in relation to Donegal, the towns that are the only towns that are zoned are the main towns, which is Letterkenny and Buncrana, and then we have what they call the 7 strategic towns, which consists of Dunlow, Balbafay, Ballyshannon, Bridgeend, Cairndonagh, Donegal Town, and Killybegs. So in relation to them, those lands would have been zoned at a time by Donegal County Council for the betterment of those villages. Anything outside of them they don't have to worry about the residential zoned land tax. So the likes of Newton Cunningham, Manor Cunningham, Killeagh, all of them, they don't have any land that is actually zoned. They're in what they call a settlement framework, so they don't have to worry about it. It's just those 9 towns that have to worry about the tax. Now, the tax is going to be to the tune of about 3% on the value that a property agent gives. So it will be based on that property. Now, as you well know, in relation to values, there will be independent value if you value the property too low for the purpose of the revenue. The situation with it is this came on last year, or at the start of last year, and it was a process. The Donegal County Council had to do a mapping procedure, and that mapping procedure had to put in everything that they had zoned on the previous maps. And that then is being prepared and sent to Revenue. Revenue will be sending out letters in the post, no doubt, January, February of 2024, asking people for 3% of the value of the property, or ask them to get the property valued. That's where we're at.
I think even as we have this conversation, there will be people who receive those letters in January and February and go, what's this all about? We've heard a lot of concern too from people who have farms in these areas. What is the situation now? Is it a fait accompli, or is there still an option to have your property dezoned if you intend to farm long into the future?
In relation to Buncrana and Letterkenny, I would say that ship has sailed. In relation to the 7 strategic towns, which we mentioned was Dunlow, Balbafay, Ballyshannon, Bridgend, Cairn, Donegal Town and Killybegs, I would say there's still an opportunity there. We had a situation within Donegal County Council where the council were requesting that we put an extension of duration on the plan. We refused. We said we need to look at these towns because there is landowners in those towns that want their land to be dezoned. So there could be farmers in there that wants to dezone the land. Now the situation with that is, to do that you have to vary the plan. And that takes time, and it takes manpower, and takes a lot of, So Donegal County Council they're going to hold a workshop with us within the next month to discuss what our options are. So
are you comfortable with all of this, though? Because it really does feel like a land grab. I mean, even if we were building loads and loads of houses to meet the need that's out there, we could maybe be having this conversation, but we don't. We're seeing housing targets being missed. We're seeing people opting now is not the time. And now what it feels like is that, it feels like a little bit of a state land grab here of private property. How do you frame this in your mind?
Yeah, I wouldn't be comfortable with it in the smaller towns. Now, no disrespect to the 7 strategic towns, but I feel that they should be given a little bit of latitude in relation to their rural setting. The larger cities and the larger towns, I think if you're going to move forward with those towns, you have to have some incentive for people rather than them to be hoarding land in the middle of a large town. And the locals want to develop, but all of a sudden the landowner won't sell. So there is a balance there, and I think it's down to the population of those towns and those cities. But it's unfortunate that some of the smaller towns have been caught in the same net. That's my honest opinion of it. I think the revenue will be very difficult to deal with, no doubt, and they'll be just coming with a large, the man says, a large hammer to crack a small nut.
And just in terms of the people with agricultural land around Letterkenny and Buncrana, as an example, and they only intend to use it as agricultural land, and therefore it has a certain value. Will it be valued as development land, which of course then would increase its value and increase the tax liability on it?
Yeah, it all depends on the location within the town we'll say within the town of Letterkenny. If you are in a prime site, in the middle of the town, you will be getting, it will be valued depend on its future potential. Now, the situation with all of those towns, there are so many different zoning within those towns. You have what they call residential, which is primary residential, which is land that houses will be built on. You have then the strategic reserve residential, which is land that will be eventually built on, but it will not be in the lifetime of this plan. So that has actually been challenged at the minute at a higher level. I think that's wrong as well. But you've also mixed use and you have opportunity sites that at the principal and then was for residential that can still be taxed as well. So there's a lot of to and froing, a lot of reports and a lot of arguing to be done before you actually pay anything.
But what annoys me is that where we have there's a housing crisis all across this country, but where there is particular pressure, and I'm thinking areas like Cork and Dublin, we already have major developers with major banks of land getting exemptions. It just talks to what's going on in this country that it seems in every facet that you look, whereby you're going to get farmers who for the first time are going to be getting, or anyone are going to be getting, these bills for tax. Yet at the same time, those in the know were able to get exemptions in areas like Cork, Galway and Dublin, where there is the majority of homelessness. Again, it just talks to what's going on. It doesn't look right. It feels bad and kind of typical of the way this country is run at the moment. Have you any concerns in that regard?
The concerns, a lot of concern. The problem I have with a lot of the house, and you've mentioned about the houses and we're not meeting targets, etc. The biggest issue I have with there, and I'll just touch on it now when I'm at, is if you look at An Bord Pleanála and the courts at the minute, there is over, I don't know if you heard this figure, but there is over 70,000 living units, houses, apartments, whatever, sitting with the board being objected to by people that have their concerns. But that is houses and buildings that have been through the development plan, went through the planning process and has been granted, and now you have a situation where you have they're objected to basically. And even in our local towns, we have developers and planners that have actually granted planning permission for houses that would see maybe 200 or 300 houses built in Letterkenny, houses built in Buncrana, even student accommodation built in Letterkenny, but people are objecting. It's going to the board. It's sitting in the board then for maybe a year to 2 years because of the mess that's there. So all of this is adding fuel to a fire that we're struggling to put out.
All right.
And we're trying. The departments are trying to see if there's other avenues, and it's just where we're at the minute.
Just a question in here. I asked you about the possibility for people to, get an exemption from this, and you said something along the lines that unfortunately it seems the ship has sailed. What does that mean? Like, what does that mean in real terms?
It means in relation to the Letterkenny, in relation to the Letterkenny town plan, we have there has been changes made to the town plan that are already in motion in relation to adopt the town plan. So Letterkenny, the council, the members of the Letterkenny town area have already done a lot of work in relation to the town plan, and they have made those changes. But if somebody, the landowner has probably has spoken to members of the Letterkenny councillors, so they probably have their changes already in place. Now, and the same has happened in Buncrana, where the Inishowen councillors have met with the planners and says, we want to D-zone this, D-zone that, and D-zone that. So all of those things have taken place in the last 2 months or so. So there's a possibility that a lot of that land has been dezoned, but that has already passed. That the time for that has passed.
And when councillors were dezoning this land, were they doing it of their own accord, or was it off the back of representations made to them?
No, it was back. It was back of the representation made to them, and also it was on the back of agents or architects also putting in. There was an opportunity for submissions. But what happens then, Greg, is whenever those submissions are made, that goes into the council and they make their recommendation. But it also goes to the office of the planning regulator, and it then goes to the minister, depending on who says what. So a lot of hoops has to go through before you actually get to your final draft, to your final plan.
Oh, it sounds incredibly
and that's where we're at.
Messy.
That's where we're at with the 7 strategic towns. We would be supposed to be reviewing them a year before they're up. That came in front of us a couple of months back. But the fact that we had all this RZLT to deal with, we couldn't say no. We can't kick this can down the road for another year, because there is concerned landowners there that don't want to pay this residential zone land tax. So we want to give them an opportunity to dezone that. So that's why we're having a workshop now within the next month to see what options are and how we can change. Now, it's not all going to be plain sailing, because if there is landowners or farmers that have a field in the middle of one of those villages, it's going to be very difficult for them to get that dezoned, because the office of the planning regulator is saying, well, that is of strategic importance to the likes of Carndona, to the likes of Bridgend or whatever. So we will not be allowing that to happen, because if we're going to move forward with this town, this is what has to happen. So that's the sort of the issues and the challenges that we are going to have going forward in relation to this.
I mean, taxing people on their own property is with a view to them forcing them to sell it or forcing them to make it available for development, even if there's no intention of that. I mean, it just seems a wee bit of an overreach. I mean, I asked you again. I mean, but generally, have the councillors done enough to? I mean, you're all complying and working with this system, it seems. Not all, sorry, but at least enough. I mean, have you been asleep at the wheel here? Do you think you've done enough to represent what the views of those you elected might be?
Yeah, we're still in the process. Greg, and speaking on behalf of all of the councils, they are getting representations, and they're taking those representations forward. But as you well know better than me, it's the process. The process can be very mind-boggling, and it can also be very time. It's one of them. It's one of them things that you're caught in a right. It's a wee bit like whenever it came in front of us in the December, and you had till January. That these things appear, which is wrong by the departments in relation to the time that they give us to do this.
Just,
and if you don't do it,
again, Paul, this is just a general commentary, if you don't mind, finally, just on how things work. I mean, this is incredibly complex, involving so many different people, workshops, meetings, deadlines, and yet it's been fast-tracked through such a complex thing, and money will be able to be taken off General Society, and they'll start getting letters from revenue next year, and they'll hit that timeline. And then we have other things, like, for instance, it's an obvious one, but you'll excuse me for saying it, things like the defective concrete blocks remedial updated scheme, or whatever anyone wants to call it, and it's bogged down, and it's slow, and it's messy, and it's convoluted. It's funny how the wheels can turn so much more quicker when it's about taking money from society than they turn when it's about helping people who are under pressure and in dire situations. I mean, do you get a sense of what I'm saying there?
Yeah, I definitely do. And in relation to the paperwork, etc., we, and a number of the councillors sort of said, like, what's going on here? You're handed maybe 3 or 4 books and maybe 100 pages in each book, and you have to make a decision on something. You're handed these books on the Thursday, and you have to make a decision by the following Monday on an item that's somewhere in that book. It's unfair, and it's just how the system works with us all, you know. And we're getting that with everything, you know. Even like you have the planning, and you have a waste management plan that was put in front of us last week there, and because of the whole Micah situation, the generation will be generating a lot of waste, will not meet our targets. So we can't adopt a plan that's setting targets for us. These things are coming in front of us every week, Greg, and it's one of the there's far too much bureaucracy and red tape, I think, involved in the whole civil servant department council rule.
Were you told what the council intends to do with the waste generated by demolitions? Has that been decided yet? What
we're looking at is we're looking at our own facilities in relation to waste. I don't want to get because it gets too. No, I get you. Just as much as simple as possible. In relation to waste, anybody dealing with waste, you need what they call a facility permit, which is the facility, and also an activity permit, which is actually the transportation of it. So anybody that is looking at areas that they think that they could have a facility there for the taking of waste, they need to apply for a permit. That permit then will go through the rigors of the law, and so far as habitats protection, water course.
Is it likely to be buried in your experience? Is it likely we're going to see people applying for licenses and permits to bury these blocks and the concrete?
Yeah, well, there will be, yes, and it will become a commercial entity because it will not be everybody will get a permit because of the location of where they'll be looking to actually take the waste, and that same person will be applying for an activity license because they would need to be able to transport it, and they need to be able to transport it in a manner that is in compliance with the waste management plan. So it will become a commercial entity for a couple of people, you know, but the facility that they will be bringing the waste to will have to be meeting all of the regulations insofar as the protection of the area that they're bringing it to.
Right, okay, interesting stuff. Sorry, touched on a couple of things there, but in a way they're all interconnected. Councillor Paul Canning, thanks for your time this morning. 086 60 20 5000. And again, I don't want to come across as anti-establishment because it's not like that, but I mean, this residential zoned land tax, it's just banging through, it's flying through, and revenue could start sending out bills, and you know you can't avoid the bills from revenue really, really quickly. Could it be a case that such a complex nationwide system could be in place before any even partially workable defective concrete scheme? Do you know what I mean? It's just crazy how things can move at different paces. A caller says it was Mary T. Sweeney who alerted us to the RZLT tax, and she's not a county councillor. The elected members had already voted for it without studying the implications and repercussions for many landowners concerned. What is Councillor Canning saying about the RZLT in Letterkenny and Buncrana and for landowners in Donegal? I think we covered most of that through the course of the interview. Houses being granted planning in the wrong place is illegal, hence objections. This is a land grab. Okay, they were kind of two separate issues, but I understand what you're saying. Here's an interesting one. Hi, Greg, good morning. I have a friend from down the country who wanted to come up for the rally next year, 2024, and priced hotels. I know it's rally weekend, but this is a joke, thanks. Right now, I don't know if this is just one hotel here. But for 3 nights over the course of the rally, it's a price for 3 nights for 2 adults in one hotel was $2,697. Now, that included taxes and fees, if you don't mind. And the price was knocked down from $2,997. Again, I must dig into this a little bit more rather than randomly mentioning this, but that definitely looks to me like a default $999 per night booking fee, which seems to pop up when you go through booking.com and some other outlets when it's really, really busy. There seems to be some sort of a default 999. But if you wanted to book 3 nights in this hotel next year, it would be €999 per night plus a little bit of a discount because you're staying for 3 nights. Hi, Greg. My daughter went to the ATM in a local shop, took out €80, but there was a problem and the money didn't come out. That was 3 months ago now, and they're still looking into it. This is a disgrace, in my opinion. Any help, please? Okay, was it an ATM in a shop? Which type of ATM? Because there are different ATMs, of course. Different commercial practices. That door's very squeaky, isn't it? Right, okay, we're going to take a break and we'll be back with our next guest quickly thereafter.
Watch the show live now on YouTube, Facebook and at highlandradio.com. The 9 till noon show is brought to you by Letterkenny Credit Union with monster loans available up to €60,000 for all occasions. Visit letterkennycu.ie.
Dreaming of a getaway this summer? There's still time to book with TUI, flying from Dublin, Cork and Shannon airports. Summer, best enjoyed on holiday. TUI, live happy.
New this week at Home Store and More. All outdoor cushions are all half price. But better hurry, because when all the half price outdoor cushions are gone, they're gone. Also, all photo frames, all wetsuits and summer toys, and all outdoor heating are still all half price. But when all the half price photo frames, wetsuits and summer toys, and outdoor heating are gone, they're definitely gone. Drop by your local Home Store and More, or visit us online at homestoreandmore.ie. New store now open in Frascati Centre, Blackrock, Dublin. Home Store and More. A happy home.
Getting married? BizPrint can take care of all your printing needs. Not just invitations, but save the date cards, order of service booklets, table cards, and so much more. See what's available at weddinginvites.ie or call 9177 955.
The Lennon Festival Ramelton is back from the 6th till the 10th of July. Pre-festival events include the Car Treasure on tonight, Monday from 7 p.m. and the Multicolour Fun Run on Tuesday. For full festival lineup including big band nights and singing pubs, check out Lennon Festival Ramelton on Facebook.
Okay, you're very welcome back to the 9 till noon show. Greg, major problem at the moment is underage drinking. Local supermarket shops selling alcohol and vapes to underage without a thought or care. A person recently witnessed a boy aged around 13 buying vodka at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. It was in a big local chain store. They weren't questioned. Absolutely unacceptable. Needs to be a clampdown. And parental attitude is too accepting of kids drinking. I think I read that one last week, actually. We learned towards the end of last week, and these figures are always published on a Friday evening, it seems, but there's been a rise in the number of people classified as homeless across the Northwest. Figures published show 20 families with 48 dependent children were in emergency accommodation across the region during the last week in May. That's 6 families more than at the end of April, with 10 extra children. There were 122 adults in emergency accommodation in the Northwest at the end of last month, 13 more than the previous month. Of those, 562 were in emergency accommodation in Donegal. Noel Daly is CEO of the Northwest Simon Community and is with us now. Noel, thanks very much for joining us today.
Good morning, Greg. Thank you for having me.
And this makes for very difficult reading, because I think the numbers the last time they were released were somewhat steady, even at a relatively high level, you could say. But this shows, and I wonder why, a significant increase in homelessness in our part of the world here.
Yes, I mean, you gave all the statistics there, Greg. I suppose the only in terms of figures to emphasise the extent of the problem that I can add to that is this is the highest number of individuals ever recorded to be homeless in the Northwest. And it's also the highest number of children in homelessness also to be recorded.
When we talk about homelessness, what are the categories there? Because there are people that maybe aren't caught in these figures, but perhaps should.
Yes, well, the figures relate to people who are approved for emergency accommodation by the local authorities. People who aren't included in that would be anyone that would be staying with family or friends. The last social housing assessment carried out in November 22 identified just under 800 households in that situation. Then there are people who may be sleeping in vans and cars and caravans around the region or sleeping rough. They are not included. And also not included as any family in a domestic violence refuge.
Yes, and also, of course, there's another group of people who are in unsafe houses who shouldn't be in them but can't move out because there's no other accommodation available. Now, I'm not sure if you would class them as homeless, but it's another group of people who can't get accommodation and are living in conditions that perhaps they shouldn't. What do you think has led to this this peak now? Is it the change, do you think, in government policy as it relates to no-fault evictions?
It's a hard one to answer in that sense, because it's proving cause and effect is always very difficult, but undoubtedly we've had this significant rise in households. The local authorities across the region have done all they can over the last couple of months to avoid people who had no fault evictions coming online, that they would get transferred to housing, but there's a limit to what they have available, and there's a limit of resources to the local authority. And again, to go back to the point about being eligible for social housing, people may be homeless for reasons other than an acute need for housing. Sometimes the problems may be related to family circumstances outside of housing. Not everybody is eligible for emergency accommodation to come. We work with people, and many of them don't meet the criteria that the local authority have to use to allocate accommodation, and if they don't qualify under that criteria, they don't meet it at all. Homelessness is about much more than housing. And I think one of the challenges that we have is that the housing authorities are being asked to deal with situations that they're not equipped to deal with. People who are in crisis with mental health, people who are family crisis, for example. It may not fit into the criteria that meets that the local authority has to fulfill.
So what do we do about that, Noel? I mean, obviously then we have to change how we are dealing with people, because otherwise these people are just going to, not get the help that they need.
Yes. And in fairness, the broad principles of what we need to do are well established, and they're contained within the government's national strategy for housing for all, and they're contained again in the local action plan, which we completed in January at the regional forum. It's gone through the councils now, and there are actions to increase the level of coordination, to bring in, for example, TUSLA more into the situation. As the Child and Family Agency, you would expect perhaps that every child that goes into homeless services is a subject of review with TUSLA, but they simply don't see themselves having to function in that area. If the family unit is deemed secure, then the child is not deemed to be at risk, and TUSLA again don't have the resources. We're stretched in everywhere.
Yeah. How you say that we need new measures to halt people's progression into homelessness and that they're urgently needed. Yeah. Talk to us a little bit more about that. What are we talking about?
Well, I think everybody agrees that the solution to homelessness is a house. And I think perhaps most people think that means a new house, but it doesn't have to. A lot of the time it can be about helping the family keep the house that they have, or the individual to keep the house they have. If somebody is going through trauma in their lives, it invariably means that they're chaotic and they don't manage all aspects of their life very well. And so one of the things that very often gets dropped very quickly is rent payments, etc. And landlords work very hard and are very sympathetic in the main to people having difficulties, and they try to accommodate tenants. But they need support. They need assistance from the state. We have this anomaly, for example, that anybody who's on the homeless assistance payment, they make an individual contribution to the rent, and that goes to the HAP office in Sligo, in Limerick. And then they may also be topping up the rent with the landlord over and above the money that's paid through the HAP system. But if the tenant drops their contribution to HAP, which may seem the least important payment, HAP doesn't tell the landlords that their payment isn't being maintained, and suddenly the landlord gets a notification that the tenant hasn't paid the contribution for 3 months.
So it escalates. It's cliff edge escalation, isn't it?
And the landlord has had no notice at all, and they've continued believing they're providing accommodation, believing they've fulfilled all the requirements of the system, and then HAP says, "Sorry, we have to end the tenancy," and they don't communicate with anyone.
Yeah, it's very hard for me anyway, and I'm starting to sound like a scratched record though, but every issue we talk about seems to end up back to the same point. You know, we have organisations like yours in situ, we have action plans, we have solutions, we have the problems identified. And yet we seem to be making no inroads in that regard. This at the same time as we talk about full employment, as we talk about an ultra-rich economy, as we talk about writing down national debt, putting money away from the future, rainy day funds. I'm just struggling to sit in a seat like this and do a current affairs programme when you talked about an anomaly earlier on, and it's glaring here that we are a well-resourced country, but we are refusing, it seems, to allocate funds to fix a problem that we generally have a lot of the solutions for. Of course, building new houses, yes, that's fantastic action plan in that regard. But in terms of the basics, in terms of helping people, in terms of stopping the progression into homelessness, for an example, I mean, you've outlined precisely how we could do that, but there seems a resistance to do that. And then when you hear economics talking about how to suppress inflation, we can't be investing too much in new houses, we can't be helping too many people, that we do need people skint. We need money out of the economy. And that is, you know, which means they're talking about more taxes, even though people are hard pressed. Like, it's I don't know if it was ever as clear as it is now, that it's almost policy to have people in these situations to suppress inflation and then eventually perhaps lead to interest rates going down.
Yes, I think it's probably more that there's a disconnection between policy and reality. We spend more time managing the expenditure and making sure that it's counted than making sure that it's used well.
But is that disconnect, Noel, intentional or accidental? Because I can't believe that anyone could be so insulated to not know what's going around this country, especially if you're in a position of power to try and address it. So when you talk of a disconnect, is it a purposeful disconnect or is it ignorance?
My inclination is it is purposeful. Because
that's worrying, isn't it?
There are many people in this country who are doing quite well, and they're the people who vote. I mean, the reality is there isn't much votes in homelessness, and so if you're looking for your target audience for the next election, the people who are going to vote for you, if you're promising a well-run economy with no wastage in expenditure, the people who are voting for you are probably unlikely to be in homeless services.
They might be more inclined to want to keep the status quo.
Yes. I mean, we all know that in the last election in 2020, the public voted for change, but we don't know what change they wanted and how many changes they wanted. But at the end of the day, I mean, you have, if you go back to the central problem, I mean, homeless services are managed by the Housing Authority for a very good reason, because it's primarily a housing problem. But the housing authorities aren't being equipped to respond to homelessness as a national emergency. It's being dealt with as a housing issue. If you take the 170 people that are homeless last month, that equates to just under 10% of the people who are on the social housing needs list in the Northwest.
And I presume you don't see taking over a hotel in Bundoran or something and housing these people in hotel rooms, because those texts are likely to come in. You don't see that as a solution to this crisis, I take it?
Well, first of all, I don't think there's a hotel with space in Bundoran. I think it needs to be more complex than that, because you can't just lump everybody into the one facility. there is a need for increased emergency accommodation and increased support to get people out of homelessness. At the moment, the local authorities have one staff member employed by Northwest Simon and Donegal working with settlement and tenancy sustainment, and Maria has about 20 cases that she's working with at the moment. And the other has anyone else that goes into the service that needs support to get out of it. There isn't any staff directly working with them. Say, for instance, the PAL provide emergency service and they work with the people who come to them. But the majority of people, if they're provided with emergency accommodation, they won't immediately get support to help them to solve whatever issues that brought them into the service. And to get them out of it. If you can get into contact with an individual early on, identify the problems before they become into emergency services, that's preferable in my mind.
Thanks so much for your time this morning. You see, the problem is that unless something changes, we'll be going over this conversation again when the next set of figures are released. Yes. And if we're lucky, maybe they'll stay similar, but it's most likely they'll continue to increase because you're identifying what needs to be done, and we know there's nothing really in place to sort of do that. And it's a horrible situation you find yourself in as someone who's very much interested in eliminating homelessness. But Noel, unfortunately, that's the frustrating world we currently live in. Maybe we might be surprised. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, take care of yourself. Okay, that's Noel Daly, CEO of the Northwest Simon community. If you would wish to have a say on that issue, please get in touch with us. 086 60 25,000. That's the WhatsApp and text number. Or give us a call on 07491 25,000. And just to remind you that you can watch this show daily if you're tuning in for the first time on our YouTube channel. Search Highland Radio Ireland, and you can watch us on your phone, tablet, laptop, big screen, your TV. Most TVs now are smart TVs. The YouTube app should be on it, or on your Fire Stick. For whatever reason, you might have one of those. YouTube is also on that device, so you can watch us there as well. And on our Facebook channel, unfortunately, Facebook Watch was discontinued, so it's not as good as YouTube anymore. But anyway, we're on Facebook, Highland Radio Ireland, Highland Radio News and Sport, and there's a Watch Live tab on our website where you can watch there as well in browser. All right, so no excuses. Later on, we're going to be talking sport with Brendan Devaney, reflecting on the weekend's sporting action, looking forward to what's ahead. That and so much more besides on the way, but let's take a break now for the news at 10 and the obituary notices.
The 9 till noon show with Letterkenny Credit Union. Simplify your debts with a debt consolidation loan from Letterkenny Credit Union. Call us on 074 910 2126 or apply online via our app or in office today.
The new Corolla Hybrid Electric range is here, and the Corolla Cross SUV is the latest addition to the iconic family. Spacious and beautifully designed, it's perfect for growing families everywhere. And it's available to order now at Kelly's Toyota Letterkenny and Mount Charles. With exceptional electric drive time and no plugging in, the next generation is ready to take over. See the new Corolla Cross today at Kelly's Toyota Letterkenny and Mount Charles. Toyota, built for a better world. Terms and conditions apply.
Harkins have been providing customers with quality fireplaces, stoves and electric fires for over 30 years. And now you can experience the elegance of luxurious worktop from Harkins. Their experienced craftsmen can fabricate marble, quartz or granite worktops to your specification. So, if you're planning a new kitchen or bathroom or upgrading your existing one, Harkin Fireplaces can provide a quote for your quartz, marble or granite worktop. Visit their showroom in Ballybogan, Lifford or call 9141109 or visit them online at harkinfireplaces.ie.
Hi folks, Paul McDevitt here. I invite you to join myself and Jimmy Stafford this Monday night for another edition of the Monday Night Sessions. On the show this week, we welcome up-and-coming Derry band Tel Jura, and also joining us is Letterkenny singer-songwriter Jack McBrearty. So that's the Monday Night Sessions this Monday night between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. right here on Highland Radio.
The 9 till noon show is brought to you by Letterkenny Credit Union. Digital loans now available. Apply online or via our app today and get your loan transferred directly to your current account.
The world awaits you. Make that dream your next adventure. Cruise the Caribbean. Sail from Crete to Corsica. Soak in Santorini sunsets. Dine on the shores of the Indian Ocean. Stroll through cobbled streets for hidden gems, or bring the little ones to a magical wonderland. Trust the award-winning Atlantic Travel to guide your next adventure. Step through our doorway to the world. Atlantic Travel, Letterkenny.
Raymond Sweeney here to let you know about some great value laptops we now have in stock, like the super affordable Ventura Europa, powered by an Intel Celeron processor, ideal for studying, e-learning, and keeping up to date with the latest news for just $249. Also, the super fast Avita Pura laptop with the Ryzen 5 processor, 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of storage for only $399. Check out these and other great value laptops now at Ben Sweeney Euronics in Letterkenny and Dunlow.
Live, on air, online and on the Highland Radio app. This is Highland Radio News.
Good morning. It's 10 o'clock. Donald Kavanagh at the Highland Radio News Desk. Sinn Féin is to move a dull motion this week, calling on the government to honour its commitment to fund 50% of the proposed upgrade to the A5 road. Speaking ahead of the debate, Donegal GAA and Finance spokesperson Pearse Doherty said the A5 upgrade is critical to preventing further lives from being lost and to enhancing the social and economic well-being of the Northwest region. He says the government must also commit to upgrading the link roads on the Donegal and Monaghan sides of the border.
Our motion isn't just about the A5, it is also about the connecting roads on either side of the border in terms of the A5. So the 10T project, which is going before the Department and Government soon, is really important. That gets the green light in terms of that road from Lefford right into Letterkenny, and also on the other end, the Clontibbert end in Monaghan. It's important that that is there as well. We can't just have a dual carriageway in the north and then leading into substandard roads on either side.
1 in 4 people in the Republic believe there will be a United Ireland within the next 10 years. That's according to a new poll which has been published today. A survey conducted by Amorc Research for the European Movement found half of those surveyed in the North believe a United Ireland will happen by 2033. It also found support for Ireland's continued membership of the EU stands at 88%. That's one of the highest approval ratings in the European Union. Noel O'Connell of the European Movement in Ireland says the most surprising finding is that people in the North have greater trust in the EU than they have in the UK government.
In Northern Ireland, 44% of people trust the EU, 34% of them trusted the Irish government, whilst 22% of them trusted the British government. So regardless of whether people voted Remain or Leave, 44% of people in Northern Ireland trust the EU versus 22% trusting the British government.
The Deputy Chairperson of the Regional Health Forum West says Celta and the HSE's efforts to streamline operations at Letterkenny University Hospital must be acknowledged, but he's stressing it's very much a work in progress. Officials told Councillor Kieran Brogan in reply to questions that a local injury unit is operational in the emergency department, and it's hoped that can be enhanced with extra funding as part of the winter plan. Liaison officers are being appointed, measures are being introduced to help frail people, and the Pathfinder initiative is helping keep people out of hospital by treating them in their own homes. Councillor Brogan says the more people that can be kept out of the hospital, the better.
We have a huge county in Donegal and everybody doesn't need to be going to the hospital. And I think there's a role for everyone, and that's from the GPs to the primary care centres, right across all primary care to the hospital and then the community hospitals. The ambulance service plays a huge role in this as well. Now we have the new Pathfinder project that has been ongoing now for the last number of weeks.
We'll get a clearer picture this week of how much money the government has for October's budget when the summer economic statement is published. The Finance and Public Expenditure Ministers will outline what the planned size of the tax and spending package for 2024 will be. Social Justice Ireland is urging them to increase social welfare by €25 a week and the monthly child benefit by €50. Colette Bennett, economic and social analyst with SJI, says the most vulnerable must be protected.
Child benefit is one of the very few protected welfare payments. So what that means is even if Michael O'Leary or Conor McGregor went insolvent, that child benefit payment is not included in any income calculations. It is actually protected for the child. And so in that way, it's separate to other universal type things that we've seen, for example, the universal credit on energy this year and last year.
It's hoped the bodies of 2 Dublin teenagers who died on a 6th-year holiday in Greece over the weekend will be repatriated within the next 48 hours. Andrew O'Donnell and Max Wall were both 18. They were students at St Michael's College in Ballsbridge. Greek police on the island of Ios say the boys died in 2 separate incidents. And there's a call to scrap the TV licence fee in the wake of the RTE payments scandal. It comes as Media Minister Catherine Martin prepares to meet the new Director General Kevin Bockhurst and the Chair of the RTE Board, Siúni Rahali, later this week. People Before Profit TD Paul Murphy is predicting large numbers of angry viewers will refuse to pay the licence fee because of the payments controversy. He says a new funding model must be found as a matter of urgency.
I really think the outcome ultimately needs to be to end the reliance on commercial revenue and instead properly publicly fund a public service broadcaster, which should not be done through this regressive licence fee, but instead should be done through general progressive taxation and a specific digital services tax on the big technology companies.
Well, the forecast, Dan Materin tell us there will be further showers today with some brighter sunny spells developing. Some of the showers persistent and heavy with a slight chance of a thunderstorm. Becoming breezy again with moderate to fresh westerly winds. Top temperatures today 14 to 16 degrees Celsius. And that's Highland Radio News. We're back with news headlines again at 11 o'clock. Until then, from the news team, have a very good morning. The obituary notices for this Monday morning, the 3rd of July. The death has occurred of Denise McDade, Mindoran, Clonmany. Her remains will repose at her parents' residence at Mindoran, Clonmany from 5 o'clock this evening. Removal from there on Wednesday morning at 10:30, going to St Mary's Church, Clonmany, for Requiem Mass at 11 o'clock with interment afterwards in the new cemetery. Family time, please, from 10 p.m. to 11 a.m. Family flowers only, please. Donations in lieu of desired to Ardeven Alzheimer's Unit, Carndonagh, care of any family member or McFeely Funeral Directors. Denise's funeral mass can be viewed live on churchservices.tv. The death has occurred of Madge Boyle, Strickcastle, Glenties. Remains reposing at Shevlin's Funeral Home, Sandfield, Ardra, from 5 o'clock this evening, with removal at 6 o'clock, going to her late residence. Funeral Mass on Wednesday morning at 11 in St Connell's Church, Glenties, with burial afterwards in the local cemetery. Family time, please, from 11 p.m. to 12 noon. The funeral mass can be viewed live on churchservices.tv. The death has occurred of Nuala Quinn, formerly of Glenties, Dunlow and Letterkenny. Funeral will take place this morning in St Connell's Church, Glenties at 11 o'clock, followed by burial in the local cemetery. The death has taken place of Edwin Davis, Luton, Bedfordshire, England, and formerly of Glenalla, Rathmullen. Funeral will take place in England at a later date. And the death has occurred of Gordon Robinson, White Hill, Donegal Town. Funeral in Donegal Parish Church at 2 o'clock this afternoon, followed by burial in Glebe Cemetery, Donegal Town. The funeral service can be viewed on the Donegal Group of Parishes Facebook page. Family flowers only, please. Donations in lieu of desired to Donegal Parish Church and Donegal Hospice, care of any family member. House private, please, before the funeral. For more details, including any family health guidelines for wakes and funerals, please go to highlandradio.com.
Déithfá córa bha agad aniu a déithach saoil a hábháil. Is féidir saoil den a hábháil trí orgán na Jónú, ach ní raibh plé riomh a golóirgwin fi Jónú orgán lenar dailach nó lenar górda. Agus is fear a rán agur iad sinna dhéanach an cinna ar son. Mar sin, cuidig leis an gine sinna dhéanamh níos éasca. Tá tuile eolais ar hse.ie/organ donation, agus bíoch Jónú orgán ina ábhar cainte agah aniu. Ó aimimenacht na seirbhíse slánta.
Cutting through the spin. The 9 till noon show on Highland Radio.
And you're very welcome back to the programme. Good morning if you're just joining us. It's great to have you on board here. Thanks, Greg, for putting the point across on how they can fast-track revenue issues against people and slow to rectify issues of the people. Example is Micah Pyrite. The state is quite a dictator. And it's, as I say, it's not agenda-driven. It's just an obvious observation. Another caller says, whoever owns the deeds of the land can surely decide if they want to zone their land or not. That is if the deeds stand for anything anymore. You either own the land or you don't. You own the land, but you're liable for a tax on it if you are in one of these designated areas. Hi, Greg. How much rubbish did you say in the dairy dump, and have they ever had anyone held accountable for this? Do you know from a dairy listener new to your show since Foyle closed? Again, sad to hear Foyle closing, but good to have you on board. How much rubbish did you say in the dairy dump? I didn't say, I don't think. Just go over that again and send it back in to me if it's something that I can inquire on your behalf about. The Donegal County Council being referred to includes councillors whom were fully informed in the zoning of land. The recent mapping being carried out by the CSO for urban boundaries is shocking. Letterkenny's bigger than Derry City, they say. Greg summed up things very well today. The wrong people are hit by this tax based on poorly drafted legislation, and our councillors have been asleep at the wheel. Unfortunately, it's just one example of all the problems we have. The delay on the still unsatisfactory defective block scheme, and still without any assurances that the source problem has been addressed, i.e., proper oversight, enforcement of regulations. The council paying $500,000 per acre for land in Letterkenny. How can private buyers afford a home if we start with the council buying land at this excessive level? That's just the views of one person there. Pit bulls and these types of dogs are becoming the norm to have in homes, which I think is wrong. It's no coincidence that dangerous dogs are involved in these attacks. These dogs are trained for fighting and attacking. They can't be rehomed. They can turn at any moment. Now, I understand exactly where you're coming from, but just to be absolutely clear and in the interest of fairness, the article that I read from talked about 1,300 children being injured by dogs over the last 10 years, and then it went on to quote a case of one child being attacked by a dangerous dog, as they've been classified. Now, that doesn't mean all 13 were attacked by those types of dogs either. Now, I don't know what figure within that figure it was, but just to be clear, that figure is not. It has not been published in the knowledge that it's a certain type of dog or breeds of dogs that are responsible for those injuries. Does that make sense? I just want to make sure that it's very clear. Congratulations to Father Sean. Best wishes from Mary Ferry, indeed, and from us all. And as I say, I'm sure loads of you will want to pass on your good wishes and what have you in your comments to Father Sean Doherty, who will be back on the airwaves of Highland Radio Live tomorrow on this programme for a wee chat. So make sure to tune in for that. You'll be able to watch it, of course, as well. Good morning. Could you please find out why the water is off again in the Manacunningham area? It's an absolute disgrace. Every month the water is off. Let me check what they're saying. Normally we get you don't get a notification, but you have to go on Twitter, and it's the most useless social media platform to post updates on, because firstly, hardly anyone in this country really uses it, and secondly, Elon Musk is throttling how it can be used. Let me see if there's anything here referencing your area. I've got Lurgan, Ballymcgorty, Convoy Town, Milltown, Town Parks, Greenfields, Ballyboat, Oak Park and Mullen and surrounds until 3 p.m. today. I'm not sure if that's the one you're referencing there. I don't see anything specific to Manacunningham, unless I've missed it and is part of some of those townlands I referenced. Kerry gave Tyrone a drubbing yesterday. That was Saturday, wasn't it? As one of their pundits said last week when they beat Donegal, that Tyrone put Donegal out of their misery, so Kerry did the same. Kind of was glad, if that was the type of Kerry that turned up, that we kind of didn't get past Tyrone, if you know what I mean. The Tyrone-Kerry game, and I think there was a game yesterday. I wasn't able to watch the games because, of course, we were in Derry. But I think it might have been the same for the Mayo game, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But Tyrone, it's like they didn't come out for the second half of their game against Terry. Kerry were just unbelievable. I saw one of the best goals I've ever seen in a game of football scored by Kerry, but it's just like Tyrone didn't come out for the second half, or Kerry were able to elevate their game to a point where it appeared that they didn't. Any assessment on that? If you're listening in Tyrone or wherever you are, we're going to be having a chat with Brendan Devaney about that and much more besides in about 1 hour. A caller says, e-scooters, there should be consideration for the visually impaired and those who use guide dogs. They make virtually no noise, and this can cause fright to both the individuals and the guide dogs who can't hear them coming. Maybe they should have a buzz on them like some electric cars do. But I mean, if you think of where we're going to be in 10 years' time, traffic noise will be quite low, because the reality is more people are moving to hybrid electric vehicles, and even a hybrid vehicle quite a lot of the time in an urban area is running off batteries, scooters, bikes, e-bikes. We really need to be planning to make sure what we can do to make those spaces usable and friendly to hearing impaired, but I suppose that applies now anyway, but certainly visually impaired. Good morning, Highland Radio. We are in Salou in Spain. I was there once, actually. It's so long ago, though, I can't remember what it was like. My one recollection of it is that around the swimming pool, it was like being in Donegal. It just, there was just Arua jerseys, full Masters jerseys, St. Eustance jerseys. It was just like being in Donegal. But anyway, I don't want to detract from this point that this listener is making. Good morning, Highland Radio. We are in Salou, waiting for a bus back to the airport, flying back to Dublin and on to Buncrana. A great week, 30 plus every day. Just listen to your show about RTE and so on. Just a wee thought, 200 cigarettes, 60 to 70 euro here, depending on your brand. In Ireland, 150 euro plus. A litre bottle of vodka in Spain, 14 euro, or 16 in Ireland, 32 or 33 euro. Is it any wonder a wee country the size of Ireland has so much extra money to spend every year? It's time the government reduces taxes and brings Ireland in line with the rest of Europe. It's supposed to be a common market. I take your point. I can't see just in the two brands that you talk of there in terms of cigarettes, because the tax is actually... and it's not hidden in this regard. It's on the cigarettes as a disincentive for people to smoke. So I can't see us ever reversing such a public health measure. And in relation to vodka, wow, half the price in Spain. Again, we're seeing minimum pricing of alcohol. It's another area I just can't see the government going back on. But wow, some difference, isn't it? Your money would go much further. But then if you wanted to get into the conversation, they would start talking about the minimum wage and, you know, all that kind of stuff and disposable income. Anyway, anywho, certainly from a tourism perspective, it's hard to compete with that, isn't it? All right, let's take a break. Good luck if you are playing the bingo numbers today. Here they are.
It's time for NCBI Bingo on Highland Radio.
It's Monday the 3rd of July. You're playing on the green sheet. The reference number is S11. It's game number 27. The numbers are 80, 83, 6, 73, 74, 43, 2, 71, 55, and finally 46. Phone your claim to 9104833 before 8 tonight, leaving your name, contact number and the name of the shop where you purchased your book, and we'll call you back the next working day. Get all your NCBI bingo information at highlandradio.com.
With 232 underway, it's not too late to secure your new Nissan. With the all-electric Leaf, the petrol and hybrid Duke, the new X-Trail available in a 5 or 7-seater 4-wheel drive e-Power hybrid, and the Nissan Qashqai petrol and e-Power hybrid, all available for immediate delivery. Visit iMotors in Letterkenny to find out more. Open 6 days a week.
Buddy the Musical is back at the Millennium Forum from Tuesday 8th till Saturday 12th of August. Don't miss this multi-award-winning West End and Broadway smash hit musical. This is a show you'll never forget. Come and join the party. It's just Peggy Superb. Call the ticket hotline on 02871 264455 or visit millenniumforum.co.uk.
Our biggest ever summer sale is now on. Up to 70% off while stocks last. Shop in store at Evolve Clothing, Letterkenny Retail Park, or online at evolveclothing.com. Our biggest ever summer sale is now on.
The 9 till noon show with Letterkenny Credit Union, now offering mortgages from €40,000 to €600,000 with no hidden fees or transaction charges. Letterkenny Credit Union, 9102127.
Okay, imagine, well, I can't imagine, I'm guessing there might be a little bit of public apathy moving into this whole RTE controversy at this point. I don't know, who's to say. We'll see how this week progresses, because the scandal is heading into its third week, and there's quite a good chance it will continue to rumble on for the foreseeable future. Senator Ronan Mullins is an independent senator, of course. Ronan Mullen, I beg your pardon, and he joins us on the programme now. Ronan, thanks for your time today. Good morning to you.
Thank you, Greg. Good morning to you and your listeners.
Now, you're bringing through proposals as it relates to the pay structures, aren't you, at RTE? What are you proposing?
Yes, thanks, Greg. Well, this isn't something that I dreamt up overnight. I've been concerned for a long time about excessive pay and a kind of a culture of excessive pay among the so-called top talent in RTE. Back in 2019, I said that those salaries should be paid to public service pay scales, given that most of RTE's money is coming effectively from the taxpayer in the form of the licence fee. So what my Broadcasting Restriction of Salaries Act, or bill, I should say, to be debated at second stage in the Shannon on Wednesday does, it basically says that however remuneration is constructed, whether it's a direct employment contract or external people with one or more contracts with the broadcaster, if it's the public service broadcaster, that means TG Cahir or RTE, then the total remuneration is capped at the level of salary of the Minister for Communications. And that's about 195,000 if you add a TD's salary to a minister's allowance. My legislation would also require them to publish all salaries that exceed a TD's salary, which is 107,000. It makes it an offence to cause inaccurate information to be given about salaries. Obviously, there's a lot of concern about the culture of concealment in at least one case in relation to one contract there at RTE. And so basically it's a piece of legislation that deals with salary capping or restricting salaries. It's about transparency in requiring the publication of salaries, and it is about accountability, that if they don't stick to these caps, or if there's inaccurate information published, then there would be criminal offences involved.
Yeah, we'll talk about a little bit more about that in a second, but also about the fact that, as you say, you've been discussing this for quite some time now, and I don't know what it talks to in terms of the media. We'd have mentioned RT salaries in the past on shows like this, but it took something being exposed for this conversation for everyone to be having it. But as I say, you and others have been trying to get this onto the agenda. It kind of maybe actually talks to the problem we have in this country, in that for a lot of those in the political classes and journalism classes, particularly in the capital, they're in this kind of a bubble, and until there was something that couldn't be ignored, everything really was being ignored.
Yes, I think that's true. We're looking at what we're discovering is, I think we continue to be surprised by what we're hearing, in terms of, for example, the brand ambassadors around cars, the culture of largesse, maybe encouraged by the hospitality industry to be wining and dining people and bringing them off to the Rugby World Cup and all this type of stuff, which the public, I don't think, had any idea was going on. And the point is this: if you're in the commercial world, that's fine. But all of this is being indirectly supported by the taxpayer contributing the bulk. You will hear the argument made, oh, well, if we lose, so-and-so from the station, we will lose a certain amount of commercial revenue. That might or might not be true in some cases, but in fact what we've noticed is in recent years when Pat Kenny went to News Talk, Sean O'Rourke kept the ratings going, no problem, so did Claire Byrne.
But that comment, that person that you comment, that you quote there, I believe it was Willie O'Reilly, if I have his name correctly, who's a former senior radio person, that kind of talks to the cultural attitude that they believe that, that people believe that these people are so important. Look, the truth is, you could put a washing machine on spin cycle on RTE Radio 1 between 9 and 10, and it would register a couple of 100,000 people having listened to it.
That's right. You're talking about talented people, but they're not the only brain surgeons in town. Far from it. And in fact, because it's the taxpayer-funded organisation, it would actually be a much healthier thing if RTE was constantly turning over and nurturing new talent. And it's not the end of the world then if people, let's say, take up a big package elsewhere. We were all very proud of Terry Wogan when he went to the BBC back in the day. That's actually part of what should be going on. I think there's also, we see how morale is being hit within the organisation. I mean, I was on Morning Ireland this morning, but I was talking late last night to an unsung hero of making that programme a success, a researcher doing their work late into the night. Those people and most people in the media and in journalism are on very modest salaries compared with what some of these big names have been getting. And you mentioned the bubble. I think there is an element. RTE fell for its own propaganda. It fell in love with its own image. With the well use, for example, to being preached at by these celebrity names who, have been constantly curating the national mood around all sorts of issues. Again, losing touch with their obligations to be the impartial presenters of news, information, current affairs, and indeed entertainment. So, look, I'm not into the witch hunts. I'm sorry for anybody who's now in the public eye, but the questions have to be asked. The politicians have to do their work in the committee, but they also need to avoid grandstanding. I wouldn't have been a fan, for example, of just because that finance guy was in before them last week, suddenly taking an interest in his salary. I thought that was an example of how politicians maybe lose the run of themselves and become more interested in the performance.
I think that's a very fair point, because if you watched it, and I watched all 9.5 hours for my sins, there was an awful lot of grandstanding. There was people who were asking questions purely for the clip for their social media that clearly did not actually really have a full understanding of the questions they were asking or the answers. And even when some really quite telling answers were forthcoming, they weren't really aware of that and just had their next question lined up. And you can always tell that because it's covered by that, that's nice, that's handy. When that starts, they don't know what's going on. And I mean that with that, but we have to call it out right across the board here if we're going to be fair. So I would agree to a great extent with you. But also what it exposes is, though, there is a culture that is very deep in that organisation and similar organisations. Capping salaries in and of itself will not sort that. We've seen from an executive board here, there's no accountability, there's no communication with themselves. They're put in those positions and, that's that. They're untouchable from there on out. And if they're found to have been done wrong, they can just resign and then no more can come from that. So how do you, and it's a big question, I suppose, but how do we get rid of that so that we, the good staff that you talk of have a good place to work in as well?
Yeah, well, I think, of course, we have to start with asking the questions and finding out exactly what went on. And I said politicians have a role in that. I mentioned the dangers of the grandstanding. So I think also what will be important is the work to be done by the external appointee now that will kind of come in and maybe just reveal to us precisely what went on. Once we know what exactly went on in terms of who these deals were with, why information was concealed, who exactly knew what other, surprising, perks and marks were involved here. You can then identify, okay, well, what do we need to change for the future? And I look forward to there being, and remember that we mustn't allow this to distract us from all the other very serious problems and maybe more serious problems that the country has, in terms of the healthcare system, in terms of housing. We mustn't allow this to become the distractor from other important national.
But that being said, Ronan, I agree with what you're saying, but we were talking a little earlier on about homelessness here in the Northwest, which is ahead of this and in terms of importance. But we also need to examine if the same people that are making decisions on housing policy or the funding of homeless organisations, if it's the same culture, because they are all publicly funded, So I think the RTE conversation actually is not separate. I think it's part of a wider conversation as to how this country is run. And that's a point I tried to make a couple of times last week.
Yes.
Because this is how public funds are being spent. This is actually really giving us an insight into how high-paid civil servants might actually think. Not, again, the very good low, average paid civil servants that are getting the abuse maybe off the back of all of these controversies. But in a way, I think this is actually really useful because we can say, right, if it's happening in this organisation, maybe we're starting to get an insight as to the detachment from other very highly paid civil servants and the decisions that in truth it's they that make for this country.
Yes, and I think what we need to move to then is just a quiet, determined but relentless focus on reform. It will be about capping salaries, I hope. And by the way, I'm an independent member of the Shannon, so I have to hope that the government will take this seriously and allow us to run this legislation and give time for it, or bring up their own legislation. I have no problem with it being amended, but it needs to happen now. But as you suggested there, the limitation on salaries is just part of this. There is a culture issue that needs to be addressed. We need a new culture at RTE, and it starts with being responsible to the public about how their money is spent. It starts with things being visible, with there being standards around all that, but also maybe a wider reflection on whether RTE has been too in love with its own image, and it needs to get back to maybe fostering a sense of community instead of just maybe preaching at the public from a privileged celebrity place.
I know there was, very finally, there was issues like this in the BBC, and one of the actions they took was decentralise out of London. I think RTE, though there might be cost implications for that, could perhaps, rather than speculate that they might close operations Cork, I think, as I say, the BBC had a model where they decentralised out of London because they became aware that they were in this bubble, that they were very focused on the capital, that everything was through that lens. Maybe it's something RTE could look at. Maybe they could give more responsibility in programming to the regions.
I agree with you, and I remember saying a few years ago, D4 needs to move out of D4, and well, obviously it'll be somebody else now that will have to grasp that nettle. But I think there's a lot to be said for it. There's a symbolism there about the fact that the RTE has been located right in the heart of establishment Ireland. It's a hell of a land bank. I think they sold off some of it at some stage. I think that should be certainly one of the issues under consideration. Greater regionalisation, but I do think the need to balance out salaries. There's many people, I think, within the organisation who would take some consolation for the fact that there's going to be standards and not runaway salaries for the very few.
Senator Roland Mullen, thank you very much for your time. Senator Roland Mullen, of course, an independent. And just in relation to, if you were reading the newspapers this morning, how many of you still do, the Nationals, that is, there was some speculation that they were selling off their Cork operations. Well, RTE said, contrary to speculation, RTE remains fully committed to its operations in Cork. The suitability of the current building for the full range of RTE's operations in Cork is being assessed, which... All right, a caller says, what about publishing all expenses as well? I'm sure that's going to be digged into. And another, why on earth are we paying a licence fee to a corporation that's funded by advertising? Yeah, it's another decent question.
Watch the show live now on YouTube, Facebook and at highlandradio.com. The 9 till noon show is brought to you by Letterkenny Credit Union, offering low-rate holiday loans with fast approval. Apply online at letterkennycu.ie or in office today.
Hi, Paddy here at Shane Conley Cars in Donegal Town. Are you looking to upgrade your car? With Shane Conley Cars, you'll find makes and models for every budget. Great finance options, and we also accept trade-ins. Check out ShaneConleyCars.com or call in to us at Shane Conley Cars from Lonaher Road, Donegal Town.
All men's wedding suits packages are now 20% off. Just book your wedding suits before August 31st and get a whopping 20% off. Don't stand still. Evolve. Letterkenny Retail Park. Terms and conditions apply.
At On Post, we believe in giving you more power over how you bank. That's why AIB and Bank of Ireland customers can now lodge and withdraw money at any of our 900 post offices across Ireland 6 days a week. That's right, your bank is in your post office for personal and business banking alike, meaning you can bank wherever you live or work. Visit your local post office or onpost.com/everydaybanking. On Post, your money for your world. Allied Irish Banks plc and Bank of Ireland are regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Okay, you're very welcome back to the 9 till noon show here on Highland Radio. Our next guest on the programme is Lee McGowran, who's a journalist with Silicon Republic. Lee, how are you getting on? Good to see you.
Good to see you, Greg. Keeping well.
Right, now, reading news report which suggests people are more likely to fall for AI-generated lies than those made up by a human. What's the background to this research, Lee?
Well, basically, we're just investigating GPT-3. So this is one of the models that's been created by OpenAI, that creates ChatGPT. It's important to note their models have gotten a bit more advanced in recent months. They're on GPT-4 by now, and one of their goals is to sort of stop models from being able to be abused in this way, I suppose. But they basically took hundreds of participants, showed them tweets that were created by people and tweets that were created by the AI to see if they could tell which ones were fake, which ones were AI generated. Overall, they can't. The verdict is it's basically very difficult for people to tell the difference between a human-generated tweet and an AI-generated tweet. So that's the main issue. Big risks for misinformation, big risks for AI-generated content and people not being able to tell the difference. And that there's multiple ways that can be abused in the future.
I think it's ever more. It's never been more important that, regardless of what people's political views are, that everything is questioned.
That's the big issue these days. I mean, again, AI, as we discussed before, it's grown so fast, particularly in the last year now. ChatGPT, everybody's talking about AI. There's great benefits for this technology, but the likes of misinformation is probably one of the biggest threats for most individuals as we use. You've AI-generated content, AI-generated tweets, AI-generated news articles, and at first glance, these articles and these tweets will look legitimate. It's very hard to distinguish a fake article that's created by an AI to a real article. When you combine that with the likes of AI-generated images, which are also becoming very advanced now, there's various ways people can abuse this to spread misinformation. I've seen examples on Twitter, hard to verify, people of an account that claims to be politically motivated. It's a Democratic account in the US. Here's an image, here's the tweets. And then when people look into it, there's no background on the person. The image might be AI generated. So you don't know who you're actually listening to online. You don't know what their real motivations are. You can't see the person behind the screen. So,
and I think this is somewhat linked, depending on which story you believe, to Elon Musk's recent decision to limit access to tweets. The claim being that AI engines were scraping millions upon millions upon millions of tweets, and then they were being used for sort of targeted censorship, but presumably for things like this here. That's why the tweets are so indiscernible from human tweets, because they are able to, the AI is able to gather so much information to target it to the viewer.
That's how these systems are made. It's just being able to, with so much information available, AI can then very easily replicate because they have so many examples to go back on. So I'd say it's unsurprising that Twitter's claiming many AI companies are scraping its data because it is a good treasure trove. There is definitely lots of information there. And the end goal of these companies is to just have, looking at it the most non-extreme way, they just want to make their systems as close to humans as possible because that makes their AI system more beneficial for people. That's a benefit, but then obviously, of course, if it's abused by the wrong individuals, the more advanced the AI is, the more similar to human tweets it is, the easier it is to actually misuse it for negative purposes. So
what does this mean?
It's also important to know with Twitter, I would say one thing about Twitter is also the fact that it is important to know Elon Musk also has a stake in AI as well.
Mm-hmm.
He is working his own AI companies, but there's multiple motivations there. Hindering the likes of ChatGPT for someone who is also pushing into the AI market, there's a benefit there as well, in my personal opinion.
And ironically, there's a form of censorship in all of that, and he is the prince of free speech. But anyway, people don't see that irony. But I just wonder if they will, Lee, because where does the future belong then, and how people consume digital articles or social media? Because we are already, if we're not there yet, going to get to a place whereby it's going to be indiscernible. Like Facebook in a way is different because we are somewhat connected most of the time to the people that we share that space with. There's pictures and they're generally in a location close to us, and you know what I mean, we can see the woods for the trees there. But particularly text-based social media, I think even those who are very extreme in their views or moderate in the views will eventually find the space so convoluted that they might look elsewhere. I really do wonder where this will leave us in a few short years in terms of people consuming that information? Because no one wants the wool pulled over their eyes.
I would say it's hard to say what the impact's going to be. I'd say in the short term, there is going to be a negative impact because most people do just look at things at first glance. And it's very easy. If it's easy to be tricked by an AI system, it's easy to be tricked by somebody that looks like a legitimate news article but isn't and is pushing a certain agenda. People will be swayed. That's what's going to happen in the short term, unfortunately. I would say for the individual, the goal has to be everybody has to start taking a closer look at what they read and look into online. Misinformation is nothing new online. It's been used for years now. People have spread false information. This is just a new tool. AI is a new tool that's being used to spread information. There's ways to tackle it in the future. There's regulation that can be used to sort of force these companies like Twitter and like Facebook to be able to show if something is AI generated. But until that's developed, it's just, unfortunately, it just comes down to being aware that something you're looking at, whether it's an image of an individual or a piece of content or a news source or a tweet, whatever, you have to be a bit like, can't just take this single source as gospel. Yeah. You need to verify it in other ways. That's the main way.
And the thing, Lee, is, and I think this was highlighted finally in this research. Let's forget what's went in the past, like, the COVID and all that, right? Okay. Because I think, that will have a more important context going forward in that it sowed the seeds of doubt, if you know what I mean. What might happen into the future, we don't know. That if there is a global health crisis, and you could argue the climate is that, for an example, but that it could have devastating consequences. And I think maybe the mistakes that were made through COVID actually make that even more likely going forward, especially when we have people that can generate so much information that could mislead people one way or other.
I'd agree. I think another problem with that is sort of information overload. Like you're mentioning a good point there. When there's an issue that's being raised and people, let's say, are undecided on, what their view is, if you're getting bombarded with so much information that you can't trust or verify at all, I'd say it will be common for a lot of people to just tune out. They don't know what to believe anymore. They can't verify anything. And maybe they're not motivated enough to actually, delve in and see what the reality actually is.
I'm already starting to pull back from spaces like Twitter because I don't really care whether I agree with them or not. It's the way the message is delivered. I just find it oppressive or depressive. I don't know how to describe it. And I think I'm kind of normal, though most people around me would suggest otherwise. But we'll see what other people think. Lee, it's great having you on. Thanks so much. Take care of yourself. 08660 25,000 is the WhatsApp and text. Have you found yourself changing how you use or view social media? As I say, I've merged over to, I'm back more, I find Facebook more, I just find it's more real. Do you know what I mean? The people, you know who they are. You can have real interactions. It feels personal. They can send you a message. You can see who they are. You can reply and help or do whatever it might be. And even the likes of TikTok, I feel you can tune that in to whereby it's stuff you're interested in. You can tune out of the heavy stuff. As I say, with Twitter, I just find it's like, I don't want to be involved in the culture wars. Do you know what I mean? I find it really quite depressing. But what do you think? 08660 25,000 WhatsApps and texts. A caller says, my local GP phone is going to an answering machine. It says no doctors are available. I'm being diverted to ED. But if I go, I'll have to pay €100 because I can't get a letter of reference from my GP. That's a catch-22. I don't know what to say in that instance. Maybe one of our good listeners might be able to give us a little bit of advice. In Moville, there is a beautiful shore walk, which is not very well highlighted. It needs more signs to indicate it's there. It also has the Maritime Museum and the Redcastle Centre, and there is Wild Ireland. Indeed, this is off the back of our conversation, I think, on Friday, about a lot of those who are landing or disembarking from cruise ships going into Derry than maybe going around in a show. Greg, the 4 lanes on the Port Road, I don't see the point to the trees in the middle. Firstly, they'll be very difficult to cut, and it'll be no time before buses and lorries will be caught on them. Why can we never do something simply? I would hope there are types of trees that won't encroach. I don't know. I get your point. I hear you. Maybe it's to discourage cars going too close to and vehicles to go too close to the centre barrier. I don't know. There must be a certain type of tree. You would think? No? I don't know. Rightio. We'll be back with more on the 9 till noon show after this short break. Stay where you are.
The 9 till noon show is brought to you by Letterkenny Credit Union, offering low-rate car loans with fast approval. Apply online at letterkennycu.ie or in office today.
At Manor Motors Opel, we're half-full type of people, which is how we come up with the Opel 50/50 finance offer. Choose from the Opel Crossland, Corsa or Mokka. Select your flexible payment option, pair it with 3 years free servicing and meet your new other half. Discover more about Opel's 50/50 offer at the Opel Open Road event. See manormotors.ie for details. Finance is provided by way of a consumer hire purchase agreement by Bank of Ireland Finance. Lending criteria and conditions apply over 18s only. Ownership remains with Bank of Ireland until the final payment is made. Bank of Ireland trading as of Bank of Ireland Finance is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Step into summer with Green Shoes. Check out their large selection of summer sandals from favourite brands like Birkenstock, Doc Martens and Echo. Also choose from Heavenly Feet, Una Healy, Imac and many more. Shop LK and one for all vouchers accepted in store. Green Shoes at Market Square, Letterkenny Shopping Centre and in Fulcara. Or shop online at greenshoes.com.
There's bingo every Monday night at Halfway House Bingo Burnfoot. Doors open at 7:30 with eyes down at 8:30. €2,500 must go. The snowball is now €2,850 on 45 numbers or less. If you're not in, you can't win. That's Halfway House Bingo tonight at 8:30.
Okay, as you would know, if you're from here, across the northwest, we have some of the best beaches, if not the best beaches in Ireland, anywhere in fact. Not to mention, or not least, of course, Inishowen. So you might want to go down and access Lennon Beach, Uris, Lag. But how do you get there? Because access isn't fantastic. That's really the point that's being made by local councillor Martin McDermott, who raised the issue at a recent meeting of the municipal district, the Inishowen Municipal District. Martin, how are you getting on? Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Greg.
Right, okay, so what do you see as the problem in terms of access? You think we have, great facilities really that, quite a lot of the public can't really access. It seems a shame.
Yeah, it's a major problem we have with a number of our beaches. We have a lot of tourists and a lot of visitors and older people with disabilities that want to go down to the beach, access the beach. We have serious issues at Lag. We have serious issues at Leanan and Uris as well, another fantastic beach. And this is a common occurrence, and not just those beaches, other beaches as well around the peninsula. And it's something I think that the council, as I said at our meeting, I think the council have to stand up here and do, be counted, because we tend to go to do all this work and we find ourselves being bogged down very, very heavily with red tape, with the OPW, with National Parks and Wildlife, with Inland Fisheries, all these different organisations, and good organisations, yes, but we can't get anything done because no one takes any responsibility. And I think the local authority needs to stand up and do this work and take it and do it, and not be looking for excuses out of doing work to beaches.
Well,
and
one of
making
those excuses might be the fact that we've talked many a time and we're not making any progress as it relates to erosion. Now, could the OPW or other bodies responsible say, oh, well, we need to fix the erosion problem before we do access, or creating access might cause erosion? Do you know what I mean? I mean, these are our local amenities, and yet we're being hit with, guilt tripping that we could actually be damaging them. I mean, we need to weed that out, don't we, and just talk about, look, there's a lovely beach. How can we get to it with doing least damage? It's our facilities.
Yeah. I mean, that's the job of the engineers, and I think the engineers are quite happy to do that. And the erosion situation we've been talking about for years, the OPW are not interested in taking us on. We've wrote to them 14 times. They still never come to meet us. So they clearly don't care. And if they clearly don't care, I think it's time that we as a local authority just stood up, done our work, and let them come back and tell us we've done something wrong.
Is the OPW a law into themselves, Martin? Because it seems that whenever we talk about anything to do with them or something they have a responsibility in, is that, firstly, who are they? Are there individuals? I'm not asking you to name them. It's kind of rhetorical, Martin. But also, why won't they come and meet local representatives? We elect you guys, right? And then you advocate on our behalf by seeking meetings with the likes of the OPW to progress our concerns or have them addressed. Now, if the OPW, which is, I presume we're paying their wages as well, refuse to meet the people we are elected, it's time we properly start calling this out. It's bloody ridiculous.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, we've had this conversation with you before, Greg, about the OPW in relation to, Ballyliffin, for instance, the golf club and Pollen Beach, with the erosion that's happening there, the erosion that's happening in Lag, the erosion that's happening in Kildare, number of different places, the rivers, the issues that we're having with the rivers and not getting them cleaned, and problems at bridges and stuff like that. And, I've spoke to you before. I've wrote to them on a number of occasions. Donegal County Council has wrote to them a number of occasions. The Chief Executive wrote to them. They did come to Donegal Town about a year ago to announce works that was being done there. We pressurised them to come to Inishowen at that time and have a conversation with us about the erosion, about the rivers, and that still didn't happen. And, they seem to make up their own rules, they seem to make up their own decisions, and no one seems to take any responsibility when it comes to the OPW.
Yeah, okay, so how do we progress this? What do the executive say to you, Martin?
Well, the Director of Service and our senior engineer here with them in the show has agreed to go to both sites and have agreed that they will certainly look at making the access available to people. I think that's something the council just have to take on board now and do. They did give a commitment that they would do that, so hopefully now within the next few weeks we can get a meeting on both sites and get the engineers to decide what remedial works they can do to make it safe for pedestrians, safe for people in wheelchairs, safe for older people, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
People
I
are
like
looking
this,
to get on buggies.
I like this proposal. Let's ask for let's ask for forgiveness rather than permission.
Yeah, well, I think it's come to that, Greg. I think you're not going to get the permission, so and the organisations that we keep asking don't seem to care about us. So, I mean, if this was in Kerry, if there was a beach, the likes of Lag or the likes of Pollen or the likes of those in Kerry, do you think that this wouldn't be fixed? This would be fixed without a question of a doubt. And I think the time has come where we just have to do the work, get it fixed, and worry about the OPW afterwards, because I don't think the OPW worry about us.
Yeah, all right, okay. Martin, any update or have you any insight into when we might have this enhanced defective concrete scheme in place? Have you had any communications or any indications?
Yeah, well, there's been quite a few dates missed at this stage, Greg, as you know, and I think going back a number of weeks back when the announcement was to be made, there was serious concerns from a local authority's perspective. We did meet with the department as a grouping, as a cross-party grouping, and there were also quite a number of meetings with the officials in Donegal County Council and the department officials to try to iron out some of the outstanding issues and some of the, I suppose, the big issues that the local authority had with the proposed scheme. A lot of work has been done, to be fair, in the last 2 or 3 weeks to get those ironed out and to get some of those things moved on. The scheme was to come out yesterday. There was, you might have seen, Mike Action Group had something up on their web Facebook page to say that it was coming out Friday. Yeah. But that didn't happen. There were some signatures not there. So I would assume that it will be out today or tomorrow at the very latest. Again, there's no confirmation that it's definitely coming out today or tomorrow, but it's definitely imminent at the minute to come out with the new regulations and new guidelines for the new schemes. There are,
do you think there'll be any surprises in it? Maybe any positive surprises? Or
I don't think so. I think it's quite, people kind of have a fair idea of what's involved in it at this stage. It's been battered about with regulations over the last number of months. I think there were some concerns in relation to the building addition assessment. There was concerns that you had to get both planning from a certificate of planning and a certificate that you met the building regulations at the time. I raised concerns of that at the time because that was something that I felt was impossible for a lot of homeowners to get a certificate to prove that they met the building regulations at the time. They've subsequently taken that out. They have agreed that is something that they shouldn't have put on, and they're taking that out. The planning permission one, the certificate of planning, is still something that is there, but we had a sort of an argument in relation to that as well, that applications that's already with Donegal County Council and that are moving towards the housing agency shouldn't have to adhere of that right now, because that would mean they would have to go back to them. So they've agreed to that as well now, so that will allow those to move forward. But there are a lot of other items that we have to get clarification on, and we have to still to get the department to clear up. But I suppose the big thing is that people really need this new scheme, Greg. There's people really needs the extra money. There's people in the middle of building projects at the minute that just can't sustain the increase in costs, and those people need the enhanced scheme to come in so they're able to get the extra money to finish their houses.
What do you think will be next, Martin? Last question. What do you think happens once this is published? Because, everyone will troll through it and someone will put a figure on who actually, what percentage of homeowners might actually be able to sort of, return their house to what it was without having to, dig really deep in that regard. I mean, where do you think this will go after this, if you know what I mean, once we've assessed it and what have you?
Yeah, well, I think that, the regulations will come out. We'll have to see exactly what those regulations contain, what the guidelines contain, what issues that we're going to have then. I mean, look, there's no question, Greg, that this is not going to, cover the costs for every build that's going to happen out of all the houses. That's a formality, and costs have increased substantially. It will certainly, cover the costs for a number of people, but certainly not everyone. We would have liked to seen the £420,000 cap increased at least the same amount that the SCSI figures have increased over the last couple of years, which is about 14%. We would have liked to see that happen. That hasn't happened. So certainly people will still have to, particularly people with larger houses, will have to put money to it to fix their houses. So, but again, in saying that, there's a lot of other people that will, be able to fix their house, will be able to remediate their house for the cost that they will get through the scheme.
And one other quick question, Martin. What is the story with the council's housing stock? We've seen the images of semi-detached, half of it being demolished, the other not. But I would speak to people out and about all the time who are living in houses that are in a terrible state. They're council houses, effectively. But they've had no contact from the council and no indication as to what's going to happen. Do we know, and I'm not putting you on the spot, but I know you're across a lot of this, and if it's something we need to come back and check, that's fine too. But what is the story with the council housing stock and people living in those houses? Because, as I say, they don't seem to, the ones I talk to, and I'm not saying that's all, don't seem to be getting information from the local authority as to what next.
No, and I suppose information is the big question here, and people want to know, and people deserve to know exactly where they stand. And those houses, to those people, are their homes. That's where they live. Once the new enhanced scheme is enacted now within the next day or so, that then allows the local authority to move forward with their housing stock. There is quite a lot of work done by a team within the local authority on the council housing stock. A lot of those houses have been assessed. They have been prioritised. There's probably 60 or 70 houses that we would have at the minute that would be a priority to get people out of those houses and get those houses remediated because of the state that they're in. That work has already been done. We are just waiting for the department to give the go-ahead to the local authority to do that. They said that confirmation would come once the new scheme is enacted, once the new regs are enacted. And as far as I know, that should be in the next day or so. So that allows the local authority to move forward with their houses now as well.
All right, listen, sorry to move. Well, I mean, you might have expected it, but just in case you had any further insight or update. Thanks very much indeed, Martin. Yep. That's Councillor Martin McDermott there, 08660 25,000 WhatsApps and texts. Just to let you know that you can join Donna Marie Doherty this Tuesday at 12:30 for Ours to Protect. It's a feature contained within John Breslin's show, of course. This week, Donna Marie will be talking to Danielle Barry from Seal Rescue Ireland about what not to do if you see a seal pup coming into the pupping season. Ours to Protect is funded by the television licence fee and is in partnership between Highland Radio and the Independent Broadcasters of Ireland. Check out ourstoprotect.ie for more information there. Okay. And we're going to take a break now as we head towards the news.
The 9 till noon show is brought to you by Letterkenny Credit Union with monster loans available up to €60,000 for all occasions. Visit letterkennycu.ie.
The moment you got told the good news.
Rob, you made the panel.
When the lads added you into the group. Skipping nights out, missing the crack. Rewatching classics and learning new tricks. Being driven to the biggest game of your life by your mam. And then you finally come on in the 51st minute. It's the minor moments that last a lifetime. The Electric Ireland GAA Minor Championships. This is major.
Have you heard about Charlie's chips? They're made from potatoes that are carefully selected, then peeled, cut, and like everything else at Charlie's in Letterkenny, cooked to order. That's why they taste so good. From 12 right through to 8 in the evening, Charlie's at Pierce Road, Letterkenny offer an extensive menu that includes a great selection of gluten-free options, all available to sit in or take away. The next time the hunger hits, pull into Charlie's. Why leave all the magic moments or great scenes you've captured on your phone sitting there or in the cloud when you can have them printed at McGee's Chemist? Using the McGee's app or one of the in-store kiosks, you can upload your photos from your phone, Google Photos, Facebook or Instagram and have them printed instantly within an hour or in by 10 and ready by 5. See mcgees.ie for more details. Hold your memories in your hand with McGee's Chemist, Letterkenny.
With all the stories that matter across the Northwest, it's Greg Hughes on the 9 to Noon show on Highland Radio.
OK, and I'm joined by Donald Kavanagh, who's going to give us a latest news update now. Good morning, Donald.
Thank you, Greg. Good morning. Sinn Féin is to move a Dáil motion this week, calling on the government to honour its commitment to fund 50% of the proposed A5 upgrade. Speaking ahead of the debate, Donegal TD and Party Finance spokesperson Pearse Doherty said the A5 upgrade will prevent further loss of life and enhance the regional economy. He says the government must also commit to upgrading the link roads on the Donegal and Monaghan sides of the border. New figures show 66% of people in Northern Ireland believe the North is doing worse since the UK left the EU, with more people. A poll conducted by Amárach Research for the European Movement found 24% believe there will be a United Ireland within the next 10 years. That's a drop of 7 points. The Deputy Chair of the Regional Health Forum West says Celta and the HSE's efforts to streamline patient movement at Letterkenny University Hospital must be acknowledged, but Kieran Brogan is stressing it's very much a work in progress. Celta and the HSE say liaison officers are being appointed, measures are being introduced to help frail people in the ED, and the Pathfinder initiative is helping keep older people out of hospital by treating them at home. They also said a local injury unit is now operational in the ED in Letterkenny. It's hoped that can be enhanced with extra funding under the winter plan. The CEO of the Northwest Simon community says the rise in homelessness in the Northwest is truly appalling, with a 26% increase in the number of children without homes. There were 20 families with 48 dependent children in emergency accommodation across the region during the last week in May. Separately, there were 122 adults in emergency accommodation, 52 of them in Donegal. On the show, the CEO of the Northwest Simon community, Noel Daly, told Greg that these figures do not include everyone who is effectively homeless. And staff at RTE say they're concerned and upset at reports about plans for radical changes at the broadcaster, claims of job cuts, splitting the broadcaster in two, the sale of 2FM and salary caps were dismissed by government yesterday. However, RTE correspondent and chair of the NUJ Dublin Broadcasting Branch, Emma O'Kelly, says it's vital that attention remain on the facts which have been emerging over the course of the past 10 days. And we're back with news headlines again at 12 noon.
Donald, thank you very much indeed. We'll be back with more, of course, after this quick break.
Nipping out to get bin bags.
We've got some.
Well, I'd better take the dog out.
But we don't have a dog.
Okay. The Double Big Mac is back at McDonald's.
Right. Get the keys.
The Double Big Mac and the new Double Big Mac with bacon are here for a limited time. Don't miss it. Available until the 1st of August. Served after 11 a.m. Subject to availability. Participating restaurants only.
086 60 25,000. That is the WhatsApp and text number, 086 60 25,000, or give us a call on 074 91 25,000. Brendan Devaney's taking a seat here now for our preview of the DL debate. Hi, Brendan. What's the crack? Good to have you on board.
Yeah, nice to be back.
Are you all right?
Yeah, it's where we got a week off. Ocean was filling in for me there, so...
He did all right, didn't he? Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't want him in full time, but he didn't do too bad.
Yeah, listen, as an understudy,
he's getting his start. It's nice that you're giving him his start, I think, in fairness.
Be careful, he's not too far away.
I know it. Yeah, I know. Right, Donegal versus Dublin.
Yes.
I think this is the fourth year in a row in the quarterfinals. What do you make of it?
Yeah, listen, massive games. A game that we wouldn't, as Donegal fans, seen coming, Greg, with the season we had, of course, relegated and got into the championship with not much hope, but slowly this team has pulled together. The younger ladies have really started to find form. And of course, we got some of our more experienced players back, and everyone has gelled together. And listen, Meath, the All-Ireland champions, were put to the sword at the weekend, and listen, it's been a phenomenal turnaround for Donegal. I suppose the senior players coming back, they weren't just some of the best players Donegal had, they're some of the best players in Ireland, and they've just fitted in, so the team had to try and manage without. It was a very tough league for them, you know, them young girls, they were heavily beaten in a lot of games. It could have went either way. Listen, talking to Maxie a few times, he didn't seem to give anything away about definitely these players were coming back, as if the doors left open. Maybe it wasn't really decided, but slowly, as I say, the experienced ladies have come back, and now we're right in the mix again. We're doing
it's knockout football now, and if you want to beat the best, you have to beat the best.
Yeah, it's going to be in the 15th or 16th of July now. Greg, so listen, this is a massive opportunity again for Donegal. I mean, if you can beat Meath, or the reigning champions, there's no reason why you can't go on and win the competition. Now, I know, obviously, Maggie's not going to be looking any further past in the Dubs there, one of the standard bear teams every season, but certainly there's nothing to fear for this Donegal team, and maybe the youth now coming through will give Donegal that extra
we have home advantage in that quarter-final, don't we?
Yeah, I haven't seen where it's actually going to be played.
No,
I would imagine it's neutral,
decided.
is it?
I thought it was a home tie, but anyway, we'll see.
Right, I haven't seen the actual venue yet. I've just seen the date.
All right.
Yeah, you could be right. It is at home.
I was right once before.
Yeah, listen, you're doing your due diligence. That's me being on the continent, you know. I'm catching up.
Come here. You have Maxie Curran and also Maureen O'Donnell. Obviously, Maxie's in manager mode.
Yes.
I think we'll get a good insight from him, don't get me wrong. But I think you'll be able to tease out a wee bit more where we where we come from and where we're going with Maureen O'Donnell, because, I mean, obviously what she knows and she'll bring to the party.
Listen, when you're a manager, you have to, I suppose, give the toe the party line, for want of a better word, and that's understandable, of course. And you can only, but then, you know, if you go to an ex-player there, you can get a bit deeper into the tactics and where they're at, and that. So Mo will bring us up to speed. But listen, hats off. I mean, fair play to them. You know, in a time when things was looking really bad in Donegal GAA for so many reasons, you know, the hurlers, of course, you know, made the Nicky Raggart final. Our footballers looked like it was a write-off season. They come back now. I know we had a bad defeat to Tyrone, but in terms of all we went through, they certainly steadied the ship and put a wee bit of pride back in Donegal. And now the ladies are on the you know, a game away from an All-Ireland semi-final, and so things always turn. You know, you got to stay positive, I suppose, even in the tough times. It can be hard to see that at times. You know, particularly I think in the men's game there too, it was hard to see, you know, how we were going to, you know, come out of that group. But yet we ended up coming second, and so listen, things will always turn. But fair play to the ladies, they're flying the flag now.
Yeah, all right, Maxie and Maureen on the show this evening. Now, we had 4 games over the weekend. 2 were on pay-per-view, 2 were on RTE. The 2 good ones, I think, were on the pay-per-view. GAA Go. The Kerry Tyrone game was an interesting one because it was. I mean, I think Kerry went in at half time 3 points up. It didn't look like Tyrone were out of the game, but then I don't know. It was just an amazing second half of football from Kerry. Tactically, they seemed to be able to change. They played this game very different to their previous game. And they were able to. They just seemed to be able to adjust and change on the hoof, and just some amazing players. And I kind of felt for Tyrone. I think Kerry gave them a few points, really, if the truth be told.
They did a job in them. I suppose that's the thing Kerry are missing, and there's a bit of history between Kerry and Tyrone, where Tyrone got about Kerry. They're the aristocrats of the game. They were always the team to beat, and they played the game a certain way, so you had to ruffle them. So I think now what Kerry have learned over the years, that we have to turn that on you. Obviously Paddy Talley, Northern coach, coming down there, a lot of emphasis on the tackle and the shape. And if you look at the game and look at the Dublin game as well, the way the second half, I think Dublin had 1-7 without reply. Kerry maybe had about 1-5 or 1-60 a point or something, and just blew the other team away. And what happens is then, because they're tactically well set up, they can just sit in and boss the game. And it's very different to a team, other teams that are playing counter-attack. When they break, they haven't got this ability. When you look at that Dublin team, and then when they on their bench come on, the same with Kerry, when they're breaking into space, you're in trouble. So if they've learned to sit in tight and they get in a lead, and both teams played the game similar, at half-time, there didn't look like there was a lot in it. And then he just blew the team away. And then they sit and they control the game. And it was a real marker weekend for Kerry and Tyrone, just to say, listen, we're here. They're definitely the best two teams in Ireland by some way.
Yeah, I don't think really we can read anything into where Donegal's at, given the fact that Tyrone beat Donegal and then Kerry beat Tyrone. I mean, I'm sure that was
Monaghan beat Armagh.
Yeah, I'm sure that was a lot of the conversations. But they're different games and different scenarios. What about the Monaghan Armagh game? 14 points apiece at full time, low scoring, extra time, and then the dreaded penalties to settle our national sport. When penalties, there's no point going over that again, is there? I was pleased to see Monaghan get one over in Armagh, not going to lie.
Yeah, were you? Yeah.
You weren't?
Yeah, I try and stay impartial. Just
I don't. Stuff that. Come on, Monaghan.
How about this? I don't like either of them.
Well, that's impartial.
No, I can't say that.
Fair.
I can't say. No, listen, I have a cousin playing for Monaghan.
In sporting terms, we're talking.
No, I have Monaghan ties, so I definitely stick with the Monaghan guys. Listen, we were supporting them. Yes, we haven't got a great history with Armagh there down through the years, Greg. So, but listen, I say penalties tough again. Armagh 3 penalty shootouts in a row, Greg. I was just thinking about Armagh. We were coming down the road in the car there from the boat, and I was thinking to myself, if they'd have won them penalty shootouts, they were in an All-Ireland semi-final last year, they're also champions this year, and they're in an All-Ireland semi-final again. Now, in your footballing life, Greg, that completely changes everything that those players now basically with McGuinness 10 years now, and that would have been like the culmination of all their work, but yet the three things that have basically changed their footballing life in many ways comes down to penalty shootouts. And listen, the same lad missing the two penalties, that's a tough thing to be hanging on him, Greg. But I don't think anybody really faults people for that, Greg. I think there was some expert penalties in that, by the way. People keeping their cool. Vinnie Corey said after the game, the Monaghan manager, we don't practice penalties, So it just shows you, sometimes maybe you're better off, maybe you're not. It's hard to know. I would always think you should practice it.
Yeah, someone probably have a bit of a soccer background as well down the line. It's just when you think of an entire season, all the training and all the stuff we don't see that goes into it, all the games, all the highs and the lows and the heartbreak, for it to end on spot kicks.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, it just does not do those players justice.
No, it's really harsh, and possibly as well, I think because it is the way it is and it's just here to stay, I don't think Armagh are overly concerned. I think Armagh had a couple of chances to hit goals.
They'll look at what went wrong during
Armagh
the
probably have more tools to beat teams than Monaghan do.
Yeah.
But they play so cautious, and they play in this real game that will try and beat you by a point. And it's such a dangerous game because you see they got up that point. The game plan was basically almost worked in terms of that kick, brilliant kick of Rian O'Neill's. Up steps the man himself, Conor McManus, who of course had 2 penalties expertly in the shootout too. But you just think from Armagh's perspective, they had a went for the game a bit more. And we've been saying that about them all season. They haven't been going for games. They've been playing. I mean, even yesterday, they had the next spare defender and they dropped a half forward, put in a half back, and you're thinking, right, they just want to go go, Monaghan, right, we're going to eke out a point victory, and there's the dangers of it, Greg. It goes to a draw and you go out in penalties.
Back to the Northwest. I mean, Derry couldn't have taken court for granted. They did the job, though, 112 to 1-8.
Yeah. Similar again, Greg, as the Kerry and Dublin game, did all the damage just at the start of the second half and then completely controlled it. And you just feel sorry for Cork coming into the Derry forward line, Derry defence then, because you just don't think you have the skills. And if you look at Mayo, you actually, like, it was a bit cringeworthy to watch. I'm looking at Mayo, nobody has playmaker ability in that Mayo team. Mayo needs space to play, or they can't play. They need a game to be end to end, or they're in trouble. And you've seen jobs being done in the season. Like Roscommon did a job in them, and once Dublin found their shape and their rhythm, they sucked them in. And in many ways, Derry did that to Cork. Then they're breaking into space. Probably could have beat them by a bit more, but it's a huge ask in the semi-final now, you know. Well,
I mean, can you see anything other than a Kerry-Dublin final?
Nah. And there's been shocks all year, and you'd think...
So that's Kerry-Derry and Dublin-Monaghan, by the way.
I mean, Monaghan... Listen, like, we took Monaghan apart at times up in Healy Park, you know, and listen, we're... Obviously, there's a new team forming there, but certainly I can't believe that Monaghan side now is in a semi, and they think that they could take on... you know, a team like Dublin is a huge stretch. Whatever chance, I think there may be a bit of chance with the Derry if they can hang in the game against Kerry. But then again, the way Kerry and Dublin played the last day, like, but we've seen it all year in the championship. Don't judge a team on its last game, you know. But certainly it's Croke Park now. It's Dublin and Kerry, and if you look at All Ireland semi-final last year, you know, come back to that unbelievable kick from Sean O'Shea, and it looks like with Dublin this year, they're saying, right, we have to win this All Ireland. You know, Desi Farrell, if you look at it, comes in as first All Ireland, year one's All Ireland, and they've lost the next couple of seasons, and the question marks are hanging over him. So should he win another one, I think, you know, he can leave 2 All Irelands in 4 years. Not bad. But should he lose it, they'll say that, listen, that first one was in the back of the Jim Gavin era, and you haven't been able to put things right. So I think this year with the lads coming back, you know, Cluxon, McCaffrey, Mannion, and you've seen them particularly come on, the subs Small coming on yesterday, Kieran Kilkenny, those players, particularly Mannion, McCaffrey, Cluxon, they weren't playing last year against Kerry, and Conor O'Callaghan was injured. Now they're 4 of Dublin's best players, and if you look at it now, they're back in that team and they're back in the groove. So at this point, you know, if you put that against last year, they would have beaten Kerry. So certainly I would put Dublin as slight favourites.
What can Derry do when you see what Kerry did to Tyrone? Like, and then you saw the kind of game Derry had with Cork. What can Derry do? You can't contain Kerry, can you? Or what can tactically they do? They can't take them on, and they can't keep them out. So what do you do?
Well, they are good at snuffing out teams, Greg. If you think back, even so good, they are, yeah. If you think back, I suppose that league game against Dublin, remember the Division 2 final? They did in the first half really snuff them out, and Dublin did open them up for goals in the second half. So, listen, they're always improving. Of course, Kieran McFall in there, Lachlan Murray fellas. I guess they are a bit better than last year. But you just look at the way the two sides played at the weekend. If they play like that, listen, it's a Derry. What's going to happen is you're going to have a performance drop from Kerry and Derry to play at their absolute best to make this a game. So there's possibilities there. I mean, Conley Gilligan will be on this evening, but he's of course an ex-Derry star,
and Kieran Whelan.
Kieran Whelan, of course, yeah, on to talk about the Dubs and what he sees. He'll be on the Sunday game regular. Good lads to give us opinions. So it'll be interesting to see what they see.
Right, okay. So we've got Dublin legend Kieran Whelan, former Derry star Conley Gilligan on the All Ireland series over the weekend that we've just been discussing. Then we mentioned earlier on Maxie Curran, the Donegal ladies manager, and of course also Maureen O'Donnell talking about the victory over Meath and what we need to do heading into that game with Dublin. Anything else? Is that it? There's plenty there.
We'll cram that in, Greg. Yeah.
I was going to say, listen, Brendan, thanks very much indeed.
Appreciate it.
Great to have you back. All right, Brendan Devaney there. The DL debate is on after 7, and it's supported by
Sister Sarah's Bar Kitchen. Excellent restaurant and a great place to be. Yeah, come down, visit us.
All right, back after the break.
The county's #1 talk show, the 9 till noon show on Highland Radio.
The 9 till noon show with Letterkenny Credit Union. Simplify your debts with a debt consolidation loan from Letterkenny Credit Union. Call us on 074 910 2126 or apply online via our app or in office today.
I got my leaving cert results, I was like, oh, what am I going to do now? Like, I was a little bit stuck for a while. I didn't really know what path I was going to go down. I'm so glad I did the PLC instead of going into a course that I wasn't 100% sure on. And I really enjoyed it. I'm literally recommending it to all my friends now.
Choose the path that's right for you. Choose further education and training. Learn more at thisisfet.ie.
If the medical experts get it wrong, everything changes. From misdiagnosis or delayed diagnosis to surgical injury or even poor treatment, all have physical, emotional and financial consequences. We're here to help. So if your treatment didn't go according to plan, speak to our experienced medical negligence team at McElhenney and Associates. Find us online or call 074 917 5989. McElhenney and Associates Solicitors, Stranorlar. In contentious business, a solicitor may not calculate fees or other charges as a percentage or proportion of any award or settlement.
Highland Radio time checks with Expressway. Travel Route 32 from Letterkenny to Dublin when you book online and travel for less. Expressway, bringing you the time
at 18 minutes past 11, and some breaking news because An Garda Síochána are continuing to investigate all the circumstances of an alleged assault that is reported to have occurred in the Slieve League Killybegs area between Saturday the 24th and Sunday the 25th of June. Well, earlier this morning, Gardaí, with the assistance of the Coast Guard, recovered a body from the water at Slieve League. The remains have since been removed from the scene and taken to Letterkenny University Hospital. The state pathologist has been notified and a post-mortem will take place in due course. Now, an incident room has been established at Ballyshannon Garda Station under the direction of a senior investigating officer. So they're continuing to put out the appeal that you've been hearing for the last number of days, but the obviously major development in that story is that a body has been recovered from the water at Slieve League. So I'd imagine we'll get an update on the status and direction of that investigation, if not today, certainly tomorrow. And they were waiting for such a discovery, I think, before they could formally suggest in which direction that investigation was going. But just to confirm, a body has been recovered from the water at Slieve League. The body's been removed to Letterkenny University Hospital and for a post-mortem, I believe. And as I say, I'm sure now we'll get an update from Gardaí on the direction of that investigation in the very near future. Right, Aldi has dropped its milk prices just hours after Lidl. It's the second price decrease in as many months for the two supermarket giants. A 10% drop in the price of Lidl's own brand milk products come into effect this morning. Now, it's their own brand, but they aren't making it. They're paying someone for it. So the big question is really, it sounds like, the supermarkets are doing a great thing for us, which, if you're looking to save any penny we can, it is good news. But who's picking up the bill? Let's see if Keith O'Boyle, chair of the Irish Farmers Association Liquid Milk Committee, has an insight into this. Hi, Keith. Thanks for joining us.
Right, how are you?
I'm good. So who's going to pick up the tab for this great PR for these companies? Milk coming down 10 cents, seemingly almost right across the board.
Yeah, we all know who picks up the tab, because the one that picks up the tab has always picked up the tab, and that's ultimately the farmer. The retailers will spin their jargon and say that they're taking the hits, but they don't, because ultimately it comes back to the farmer every time. We know this. It has happened for the last 10 years. We've taken up the slack, so it's not going to be any different this time.
Does that happen directly? Do they come to you and say, we're dropping it 10 cents, so we're going to give you less, 10 cent less? Or do they get it out of the farmers down the line? How does that process work?
So basically what happens is I sell my milk to a processor. So there's 5 or 6 main processors in the country that supply the milk to the supermarkets. And the processor goes into tendering, and it's the best price that wins. And the certain discounters would be very heavy-handed on their tendering, and they pitch nearly one off the other, and it's whoever's the best price. But ultimately, the farmer then is left picking up the pieces, because that's what's left over for us, which is usually always a problem. There's not enough.
So farmers in this space also price takers? In other words, the processors come back to you and say, look, we've just negotiated our new deal, and unfortunately we can now give you such and such rather than such and such. Is that how it works? I know it's probably more complex in the ins and outs of it, but is that the nuts and bolts?
It's the nuts and bolts of it. So basically, ultimately, you see where it's coming from. The global milk price for the last 6 months has dropped considerably. But unfortunately, liquid milk is the milk that we buy off the shelf 365 days a year. So to be a liquid milk, there's only 1,300 liquid milk suppliers left in this country, because each and every one of them have dropped off, sold their contracts and got out of it because it's not viable. Because what will happen is exactly what you said. The retailer will push, then the processor comes back and says, lads, this is what's left. And ultimately, with the price, the input costs associated, to make it clear, to keep milk supplied in your shelves for the winter, we have to have cows calving in the autumn of the year. So by doing this, we have to feed high concentrate levels to keep the milk flowing all year round, which is a higher cost. Obviously, cows can't be out on pasture for Christmas and whatnot, so they have to be indoors on a higher feed and higher costs. But unfortunately, nobody can seem to understand this. I have personally myself over the last 3 years spoken to retailers, and highlighted the difference in these two systems, but nobody wants to listen. And the fear we would have now is, are they gone too far? Are they going to keep? You talk about price wars. Well, this is exactly what it is. They keep cutting the price, and we're the ones left to pick up the slack. And it can't last much longer. Let's be honest. The cost. And I appreciate the cost of living is extremely high, because I have that cost of living as well as a.
But can I just say on that point, Keith, at the end of the day, there is very strong indications that some retailers are profit gouging, that inflation is artificially high because profits are higher, right? So, I mean, it is, it is possible that these businesses could take the hit, that they could absorb these cuts, but they're not. They're going to pass them down the line from processors down to farmers.
I would 100% agree, and as a consumer myself, rearing a family, will be delighted. But that doesn't happen. We have seen this happen, that they keep dropping down the prices and it's left to us. And yeah, there is, and there probably is. I would agree there is price gouging. But unfortunately, I can guarantee you there will be nobody's basket of shopping will be any cheaper next Friday than it was last Friday, because where they might have taken 10 cents a litre or 10 cents for 2 litres, which is only 5 cents a litre, they're using it as
well, it's a staple. It's a staple, so it looks like it looks like the So,
and 5 cents a litre, even if these retailers have to take that hit, it doesn't mean anything to them. 5 cents a litre is an awful lot of money to a dairy farmer, and that's what the problem is. And you have to remember, like, in all the dairy farmers in the Republic of Ireland, there's only 1,300 registered liquid milk farmers. That's all that's left. Every year we get a drop off, every year without fail, and it's deemed an old man's game. Why is it deemed an old man's game? It's deemed an old man's game because the youth don't want to do it, because there's no profit in it.
Is it also a big boys game too? And pardon my ignorance, because I'm not a farmer, Keith, but I do know there's a lot of dairy farmers that are buying up land because of the amount of cattle per acre or whatever it might be. So does that mean that we could end up really a consolidation of milk production, in that, the bigger the boys, the more resources they have?
What has happened is, we pride ourselves in the family farm in Ireland, and that's what helps us all over the world. Family farming, and which is our selling point for Kerrygold butter in the US. It's family farming, which is deemed, 80, 90, 100 cows, and that's family farming. But unfortunately, with all these new restrictions that's coming upon dairy farmers in full, with derogations and whatnot, and it's leaving it in a way that it's going to have to be the survival of the fittest. And there's probably a little bit more leverage with the bigger lads to leverage it up and be it buy or lease or rent more land, and which is creating the price of land to be extortionately high now, which is another major problem. But like last Friday, it all came where derogations, which is it's your stocking rate per farm is going to be cut, and like every dairy farmer and farmers across the board are working very hard towards trying to be, obviously, we have to be environmentally friendly, and we all are, but we're doing the work, but we really need the science to work. And we're not given time, and it's just creating exactly what you're saying. Farmers running out, competing with one another to get land, to try and hold the number of cows that they have just to stay viable. Because let's remember, if you have to cut back your cows, that means you're cutting back your income.
So you buy more land to maintain your stock. Can I ask one other question, Keith? What is the future? Is it to whittle the industry down? Like, in other words, you talk about there being 1,300 milk producers in this country. Do we get exactly? I beg your pardon, Keith. Is it a case that they're trying to get it down to a certain level that will be able to supply our liquid milk requirements in this country, or could it get to a point where we're importing milk? Just pardon the ignorance, but I think it's not something that's often discussed because everyone presumes everybody knows. So are we over supplying liquid milk at this time, or are we getting to a point whereby we might have to import to meet the needs if it became completely unviable to produce liquid milk?
So yes, we actually aren't. We are not over-supplying liquid milk for 12 months of the year. There is a period for December, January, and coming into February that we actually only just have about enough milk. There's a pinch point definitely around Christmas and first 2 weeks of January where it's questionable, have we even enough last Christmas? So going forward, it would be I would estimate, I would think that going forward we will have to import milk to keep our own supply for 12 months. So I'm meaning in the December, January time of the year where lots of guys dry off all the cows. They take 6-8 weeks off and they'll calf their cows in middle of January, early February, go to grass and take all the milk off grass and run a very lot lower cost system than having calving a cow and milking her for the winter.
All right, okay.
That's your question.
Yeah.
Yes, it is very likely that we will not have enough milk. We will have to import milk going forward if this keeps going.
How is that environmentally...
Retailers for this.
Yeah, but how is that environmentally friendly?
Of course it's not. Of course it's not. Not at all. But we don't seem to think that far ahead.
It's just contradictory. It's contradictory.
We let things go before we realise it's gone, and that's what has to be. And, we can keep going on and we can hear, the farmers are crying again. It's justified. This is the thing. It is justified why we're crying again. And there's a lot of farmers that wouldn't even dream of supplying milk 365 days a year. You have to remember, to supply milk 365 days a year, you have to be milking your cows Christmas morning, and even worse than Christmas evening when everybody else is sitting in after having their dinner. We have to turn around and go milking cows. But we do that, and we do it, but we have to get paid to do it, and that is the key to it.
Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Take care of yourself. That is Keith O'Boyle there. He's the chair of the Irish Farmers Association Liquid Milk Committee. Just to confirm that breaking news that we brought to you just before that item, that An Garda Síochána investigating an alleged assault in the Slieve League Killybegs area on the weekend of the 24th and 25th of June. Well, a body has now been recovered from water at Slieve League. It's been removed to Letterkenny University Hospital. The state pathologist is en route for a post-mortem, and I imagine once that post-mortem is concluded, we'll get a clearer picture of the direction of that investigation.
Watch the show live now on YouTube, Facebook and at highlandradio.com. The 9 till Noon Show is brought to you by Letterkenny Credit Union. Digital loans now available. Apply online or via our app today and get your loan transferred directly to your current account.
Edel Cashman, liver transplant recipient, encourages you to talk about organ donation with your family.
People say it's the gift of life, and that's almost become a cliche, but it literally is the gift of new life. It's just so important for people to talk about organ donation because it's not something I would have given a second thought to before it became my life.
For information, visit hse.ie/organ donation and start talking about organ donation today. From the HSE.
Join the Donegal Youth Service for a fun-filled day at the Party in the Park on Friday 7th of July from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. Letterkenny Town Park will come alive with live music, thrilling circus skills, and festival face painting for all the family. It's a family-friendly event you don't want to miss. Admission is free, so bring the whole family along to Party in the Park for a fantastic day full of fun and entertainment.
Fabric World's hot summer sale is now on. Over 5,000 metres of curtain and upholstery now half price or less. Lining from £1. Up to 20% of craft cotton. Hot discounts in our summer sandals and fashion department. And there's always fabulous Euro rates at Fabric World Maydown Derry.
Rejuvenate your skincare routine this summer with the Clarins Big Beauty Gift at McElhenny's. Purchase 2 or more Clarins products, one to be moisturiser or serum, and receive a choice of 3 free travel size products. Purchase a 3rd Clarins product and receive 2 makeup essentials. Offer available in-store at McElhenny's and online at mcelhennys.com until July 16th, while stocks last.
A listener says, hi Greg, we're getting 37 pence, sorry, I beg your pardon. We're getting 37 cent per litre for our milk. It costs $1.20 per litre in the shop. We're just hanging on by a thread. 4 children to rear and a mortgage plus the massive cost of living. Farmers won't be able to stick this much longer. So 37 cent per litre of milk to the farmer, and it's 120 cent per litre in the shop. A caller says, on the AI matter, ChatGPT was able to write a convincing CV for a 16-year-old. ChatGPT won't replace people, but people who use the AI will go further than people who don't use AI. Well, using AI might get you in the door with a good CV, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you won't get found out once you're in the business. So I don't know, it's interesting, not contradicting you, but there's a couple of ways to look at it. Right, Amanda Boyle is Childcare Development Officer with the Donegal County Childcare Committee. Good morning.
Good morning, Greg.
Good to have you on the show. Right, okay.
Thank you.
Talk to us about this information and recruitment event that's taking place shortly.
So, Greg, we have, as you said, an information and recruitment event happening in Letterkenny. It's coming up on the 12th of July. So, really what it is, it's for an event for the earlier sector across the whole county of Donegal. And suppose we're looking to attract early learning and care services, childcare services, any early years educators that are seeking employment, childminders and early years students. So any of those people and, members of the public who just want to find out maybe a wee bit more or interested in a career in early years, we should be able to have information available for people like that as well. So it's just to support recruitment across Donegal in the earlier sector.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously we're not going to get into it now because this event is not about it, but it is in a space whereby there's an awful lot of conversation and some protests about the early childcare services, but it depends on which area of those services you work within. I presume there's still an interest and an appetite from people to get involved in or to upskill within this service area.
We definitely think so, Greg. We really do. This event is designed to shine that positive light over the sector and to, I suppose, allow an opportunity for people who are working in the sector or who would like to work in the sector or who have maybe previously worked in the sector to come together, to network, to ask questions. And you're right, there is a little bit of, I suppose, a wee bit of an issue around recruitment across in places in Donegal, but nationally as well. But I suppose there has been a lot of growth. Early year services in Donegal have been expanding. There's a high demand for the sector. So that in itself has created some of these recruitment issues as well. There is movement within any sector, but we just find that really the amount of childcare services that are growing in response to the demand for childcare, and that's a really positive thing. There's a level of investment now in early years that we haven't had before. We have investment through the ERO in the rates of pay for early years workers. We have core funding, which is, millions of euros towards supporting high quality childcare. So we're kind of hoping that by pulling our resources together in one space and getting all of the early years students and providers and, you know, people who are maybe unemployed or just want to find out about the sector to come together at the event and get the information they need.
I mean, obviously, it's going to appeal to people already operating childcare services, those working within those services, or those interested in joining them. But if there are people who might want to establish a childcare service, for an example,
absolutely,
if they see a gap in the market in a particular area, will it be a worthwhile event for them to attend?
Absolutely. New services and existing services. So we ourselves will be there. The team from Donegal County Childcare Committee will also hoping to have other organisations that will come and have stands at the event as well, which will, you know, about supporting small businesses, about providing information for new startups, about expansions, about, you know, kind of anything that they want to know in relation to starting a business. And childminders as well is an area of growth in Donegal, and anybody interested in that, we have our Childmind and Development Officer who will be there on the day and answer all of the questions that any childminders might have, whether they're thinking about it or, you know, they just want to find out a little bit more. More than welcome to come and chat with the Childmind and Development Officer. We don't like to target, you know, the individuals maybe are reluctant to get back into the sector, or who are not sure whether they want to do it or not. We will have the services themselves will be present, or a selection of services, and they can answer questions directly about, you know, the support that they offer new entrants into the sector. We'll have the local Donegal ETD and ATU, so they'll be there as well, talking to students or, you know, anybody who wants to upskill or
well, that's what I was going to ask you. Is it nothing's easy in this life, of course, but is it doable to retrain or to pivot, or say, for instance, you left school 4 or 5 years ago with a leaving cert and you went into retail or something, or wherever you might have chosen to work? Is it difficult to train up to work in this area, or are there pathways for, you know, say for instance you didn't go on to third level, but now you're thinking, right, this is an area I could work in, or maybe you've been working in a different industry and you think, this might suit me a little bit better. Is that doable? Is it possible? Is it very difficult?
It's not very difficult, Greg. It is something that we would definitely encourage someone who's thinking about it and feels that this is the sector that would suit their needs and their personality to explore it. And as I said, ETB and ATU are best placed to support a student at any level, whether they are, you know, entry level or they already have a qualification that will allow them to, you know, to succeed in a higher level. Services also are there, and they can talk to potential employees, and it's about making that connection between the employers and employees and finding out and asking those questions about, well, what if I wanted to do A, B or C? And, you know, the services are really good at promoting that within their own teams and having, you know, a professional workforce that's graduate led is the end goal, I guess. And managers and childcare organisations really do provide many resources that the staff or employees may need to, you know, get themselves to that next level. But even at entry level, we will have, hopefully there at the event as well, the information around schemes and, you know, entering into employment schemes, the child sector, which is a great platform because you can study and be centre-based while you're going through those schemes. So once you've done a full cycle, you are then have the experience and the qualification you need to be employed in the sector.
All right, okay. So it's in the Clannery Hotel, Letterkenny, on Wednesday, the 12th of July. So it's a week this Wednesday, running from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Do people have to register in advance? I presume service providers, is it too late if they're seeking to advertise vacancies? Is it too late for them?
It's not too late, yeah. So we'll have a job board in place where we are advertising any vacancies that any service in the county has. So please get in touch with us if you want to advertise a vacancy. If you'd like to hold a stand at the event and meet the potential employees, then that's also an option. Then they can contact us for that as well. The stands are limited, so we don't have, an unlimited amount of space. So if you are interested, my advice would be to get in touch sooner rather than later. info@donegalccc.com, or you can call us on 074 91 23 442.
Okay, thanks, Amanda, for your time. Have a good day. Amanda Bull there, Childcare Development Officer with the Donegal County Childcare Committee. All right, so we're going to be talking about a new documentary, Take Me Home. Its maker is Austin Kenny. He's going to be joining us after we take this break.
The 9 till noon show with Letterkenny Credit Union, now offering mortgages from 40,000 to 600,000 euro with no hidden fees or transaction charges. Letterkenny Credit Union, 9102127.
The National Brown Bread Baking Competition, sponsored by Aldi in conjunction with the NPA and ICA, is back. This year's winner will pocket 15,000 euro and get to sell their prize loaf in Aldi stores for a whole year. The champion will be announced at the National Ploughing Championships in Ratheniska, County Laois. Visit aldi.ie/brown-bread-competition for details. Not trying to butter you up, but we know you can do it. Aldi, everyday amazing.
I've just had the Eclipse Cinemas experience. Wow, they truly have taken a night at the movies to a whole new level. Amazing recliner chairs, director's lounge VIP rooms, pizza and hot food served to your seat. Have a glass of wine and enjoy the film on the big screen. Try it for yourself at Eclipse Cinemas, Bundoran and Lifford Strabane, where the stars shine brighter. By the way, the pizzas are amazing. You can book your seat anytime at eclipsecinemas.ie.
At Hickey, Clark and Langan Insurance Brokers, they compare quotes from all the leading insurers, so you get a great price. Home, motor and van, farm, holiday home, travel and liability insurance, they quote them all. So if the worst happens, you're covered. For a competitive insurance quote today, call Hickey, Clark and Langan on 9126688 or pop into their office at Ballymacool, Letterkenny. Hickey, Clark and Langan General Insurances Limited, trading as Hickey, Clark and Langan, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Getting married. Men's wedding suit packages are now 20% off. Book before August 31st. Evolve Clothing, Letterkenny Retail Park. Terms and conditions apply.
Okay, joined on the programme now by Austin Kenny, a documentary maker. He's currently working on his next project, or one of them anyway, Tape Me Home, TAPE. Good morning to you, Austin. Thanks for joining us.
How are you doing, Greg? Thanks for having me.
Good to have you on board here. Now, of course, it's clear. I think you have a Dublin accent, but you have Donegal connections, Austin. Run through them for us.
Yeah. Back in the 90s, my auntie used to live up there. Auntie and uncle. Uncle has passed on since. He did a lot of work up there. We're actually not from Donegal, but he did a lot of work up there. He was a builder, and he was stationed up there, kind of building a school for a good few months, and then he was called back for a few times after. I actually watched the 92 All-Ireland final in up in Donegal.
Cool.
Which obviously was a losing one for a Dublin person. So I thought I remember really from that, to be honest.
Yeah, it wouldn't be easy to forget. Okay, but anyway, so that's it. You've a bit of experience of Donegal, of course. Talk to us about the documentary you're currently working on, Austin.
Right. So it was something I made back in college about 10 years ago. It was based on cassette tapes that I found from when my mum and dad emigrated to Australia in the 70s. And it was just audio cassettes because my dad's family back in Offaly didn't have a phone back then. So they used to record their voices to audio cassette and post them back, and they'd kind of say there was one phone in the town. So, I'm sure there was probably a couple more, but there was one public phone. So they'd often record on the tapes and say, we're going to call you on this date at 4 p.m. or whatever. So they might organise a phone like that, or a phone call that way. But so it just was so many different memories caught up from talking about new potatoes to newborn babies. And it's something we're trying to build on now. I'm working with a production company now. to make something kind of a bigger, more kind of more national scope of it.
Yeah, it's quite innovative. How widespread was this type of communication, do you think, at the time?
Well, I think there would have been quite a lot, it's particularly in rural Ireland, and that's why I kind of called it Highland Radio, because I thought, it was particularly rural stations, and Donegal particularly had a lot of emigration, I know, even more so than a lot of counties in Ireland. I would think there's, so we're looking for contributors, and that's really kind of what I'm on. And I would think there's a lot of people that were kind of affected in the same way, and that there's such a comparison to the communication you can do nowadays. But even anything to do with people that maybe had video recorders and sent them back as well, and it all just creates a lovely emotive story. And something, it's pretty different to what you get over the phone.
And listening back to these tapes, how was it conversational? Had they put bullet points down and said, "Oh, I need to tell you about," because it's and we'll get to hear that presumably as once the documentary is released. But how did what form did, in your family's case, did these tapes take?
So it was kind of, it depended on the night. Sometimes there was they were just recording a bit of a sing song in the house. Maybe it might have been Saturday evening. Maybe there was a couple of drinks taken and people were kind of getting a bit in the mood for singing. And you'd hear somebody calling to the door and they go, you'll sing a song. And they'd come in and sing a song, or somebody would tell a story. There were other days then they'd record an All-Ireland final and send it over the full match commentary. And then there was on Mum and Dad's side who were over in Australia, they were kind of talking about stuff like different things, like talking about speedboats and things like that, because that was something normal that people had in Australia then, speedboats, and it was just such a foreign thing to compare to living on the Shannon in Offaly in the 70s,
and I suppose not in your family's case, but I'm saying generally, I suppose to some extent too, there's going to be a pattern in that, people are going to say, at home it's great, it's lovely, we're having the crack, you're missing it. And then for those out foreign, it's like, well, this is a new life, look what we have access to and all, with no malice or whatever. But I suppose, especially given the fact that there was a delay in between the tapes arriving and going back and forwards and what have you.
Yeah, like it was heartbreaking, and even playing the tapes from Mum and Dad back and vice versa from my aunties and uncles. It was heartbreaking thinking what they were missing out on, because I know particularly my mum didn't really want to go. My dad left for work at the time, and Mum didn't really want to go, so she was really missing home more than him. And I'm trying not to let that on, I suppose, and because it was such a long way away back then as well. You couldn't fly back so easily, and there was very few. Well, there was a lot of Irish over there, but less connected than they are now. There wasn't Irish groups so much, and then I suppose that Dad was conscious then of the life he was kind of having there compared to the life he couldn't get back home because the work was quite scarce in building him. So it's one of those ones. It's great to have, but yeah.
So in terms of contributors, what are you looking for? Are you looking for people with tapes? Are you looking for people who communicated using tapes, even if they don't currently have them? I mean, or are you casting the net even wider than that?
I'm kind of looking for particularly audio, like sound or video tapes, particularly, just because that's kind of the angle we're going on in that. It would be great to talk to people who have some really good stories and maybe some photos of the time to back them up, but I'm kind of looking primarily for to kind of make a sound or video landscape that we can put on the TV and then talk about the stories around it. Particularly interesting stories or emotive stories. Like my brother was born over there, and that was kind of a particularly big story on the original tape, the original film I made back in college. And for anything like that kind of has. But then small stories as well can just as heartwarming, it's. And
I think it's also a way of seeing what material comes in and how it fits into just the storytelling, because that's what a documentary is, isn't it? It's about storytelling.
That's it. So I've got a couple of people at the moment who've sent me some nice things, and it's weird because it's just working to see what we have, and then you kind of, as they say, you build a narrative then, so you might put all similar types of stories together, and then somebody followed by something else, or somebody says in Donegal, might link to something else that somebody else said Mayo or something like that. You know what I mean? It's all that kind of...
We're having a few messages in talking about, people that are currently away. Now, obviously, this is a different form of communication. People can video call and call at will, and it's all free on WhatsApp, whatever it might be. Yeah. So, are we talking about a time period, or are you looking for that comparison, or what's the story?
I wouldn't. I suppose originally I was looking for something kind of immigration and communication in a bygone era and how it compares to now, but I wouldn't pin myself down completely to that, because I'd love to do the comparison from then and now as well.
Yeah, because I'm not really convinced. I don't know, and this is sort of just wondering. It's nothing to do with your documentary as such. Even though I think maybe the fact that you can get back and forwards a little bit easier, though it's still a struggle for most, might be different. But I don't know how sort of live video calls or live phone calls, if it makes it much better than it was with delayed tapes, if you know what I mean, because it still is impersonal, and even to some extent it might make it a little bit more difficult, because you're ever constantly, regularly reminded of that separation and the gap. I do wonder if it's in a perverse way, well, it's probably not a perverse way, but if it's a little bit more, even probably a bit more difficult for mums and dads at the moment.
Yeah, true. That's a good way of putting it, Greg, actually. Yeah. And also if it's somewhere like Australia where there's a time difference as well, so it's a real upset, a good upset, but an upset to your day. You can say, God, we've got this call at 11 o'clock and they're doing, they might be heading out to work at that time over in Australia, and it's 11 p.m. for you. So it's a real kind of, there's a break in kind of in what you're doing, and just, you ever have that conversation with somebody and they're in a completely different mood or a buzz than you are at the time, and it just feels really strange. And it's in a way it's kind of, and they talk about this in the documentary I made, that it's so nice to hear the tape at your leisure and sit down and play it at your leisure and go and then think about making notes on what you're going to write back or send back to them yourself,
You wouldn't want to just leave every tape with a question. You'd be there all day waiting for answers. Okay, so just very finally then, there is an original documentary that you've already done. Someone this came across someone's desk presumably and thought, right, we can expand on that or we can develop that out. So can people listen to the original documentary is A, and B, how do you want people to contact you if they've got some material that would fit into the conversation we've been having?
Yeah, well, the original documentary is on YouTube. It's a video documentary, so it's I actually don't have the exact link now, but I did send it to your producer.
Right, okay, we can link that out. Yeah,
and for me, I'd love people to contact me on any particular way. Twitter, I'm Austin Kenny. That's AUSTINAENNY. Just Austin Kenny 1, the number 1, and on Facebook and Instagram, I'm austin.kenny.75. Anyway, there's a phone number as well, which I can leave with.
Yeah, we'll leave it with it. We'll not read it out. We have it. Okay, Austin, listen, thanks for that. Interesting stuff. And I'm sure you've evoked some memories for people as well in reminding them that such a thing might have happened. All right, take care. Yeah. Austin Kenny, their documentary maker. Did you communicate in that way? Is it more difficult now? As I say, I'm supposing I'm not currently in that situation, and I would find it quite difficult. I'd struggle with it, but many of you out there are. But I mean, is it, that access, those videos calls, does it make it a little bit easier? I wonder. All right, we're going to finish up with some comments that have been coming in relation to the new road coming into Letterkenny. What's the purpose of the trees? Okay, that's a repeat of one we had earlier. I don't know. We're not able to answer that question because it's kind of subjective, isn't it? Hi, Greg. Who approves roadworks? Travelling Dunfanaghy to Letterkenny taking over an hour due to roadworks in 3 different locations on one road. I don't know. A caller says, is the GAA Senior Football Championship set up in such a way to have a Dublin Kerry final, or am I paranoid? Well, I don't know the ins and outs of it. I think into the semis, the draws, it was decided that if teams had met before, they couldn't be paired again in the semis. Isn't that correct? So I don't know if that contributed to this theory that a Dublin Kerry final had been created. I don't know. I'm not sure. You wouldn't rule anything in and out, but who's to say? Morning, Greg. Beaches closed of luck. Closed. Beach is closed. Look at Achadahor Beach. We've no access to our beach. We were in Lifford and none of the councillors stood for us, only Ian McGarvey and Frank McBurty. I think I'm familiar with that case. All right. Is that another one of those which becoming more and more... we see more and more now. Is that a rights of way issue there? I wonder. I suspect it very well might be. I have a query regarding home help, says this listener. My mother's home care company have been working on a skeletal staff lately. They have requested family to help out. We're a very small family and aren't available at all times. My query is that because the company has a contract with the HSE, if they're unable to fulfil that contract, are they not obliged to ask the HSE to seek help from other agencies? So this is a company subcontracted by the HSE to offer home help. They're short on staff. They've asked the family to help out. The family aren't in a position to do so all of the time. And their question is this company not fulfilling its contract? And if so, are they not obliged to ask the HSE to seek help from other agencies? Any insights into that? Again, 086 60 25,000. My granddaughter was recently sick and her mum called NowDoc for an appointment. When the phone was answered by NowDoc and they heard the child, they said not to wait for an appointment and they called for an ambulance to come to our home, and today I got a bill for €100. Why am I paying this bill when they made the call as opposed to seeing and accessing the child first? Surely this charge is via them and not me, as my granddaughter has a medical card. That's a complicated one. Don't know how you'd get to the bottom of that one, but I think even if you call NowDoc, you're kind of giving over to them to make a medical decision. They called the ambulance. But if they did, should it be €100? Should it not be less? And also, the child's on a medical card. How is that factored in? I don't know the answer to that question. Greg, I have to ask as to why you label yourself when you query or question. You said today that you're not anti-establishment, which I'm not, just clarifying. And recently, you're not an extremist or a conspiracy theorist. Why do you feel the need to label yourself when you ask questions? Is that not part of the problem? Should we not question everything? I think we should. Yes, indeed. But you know yourself. Perhaps I do it too much, but it's no harm now and again clarifying your position, because people tune in and out, and I don't believe I'm a particular shock jock, or I'm pretty much, I don't know. I will keep it in mind. I appreciate your feedback. All right. I want to thank Donna Marie Doherty and Neve working on the show today. We're back with you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. And just a reminder for you that Sean Doherty, father Sean Doherty, will be joining us on the show tomorrow as well for his first live chat since being ordained into the priesthood. That and so much more besides. Don't miss it.
The 9 till noon show is brought to you by Letterkenny